Have you been watching, is it Truth Finders or Truth Hunters on Amazon?
I've
With
not
Nick
been
Frost.
able to watch any. No, I saw a fucking ad for that
I
earlier.
watched a couple of episodes today while I was working. It's really good. It is good.
Yeah, I need to check that out.
Do you know, it's that right amount of comedy, scary, and actual
seriousness.
Actual seriousness. Like it's genuinely really good. I liked it.
It's like I felt that with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost's Paul. Like I thought it didn't need to be absurdly hilarious, and I was like, but it has the right amount of drama in it also.
Yeah, I think that's Shaun of the Dead's the same, really. It's hilarious, but it is still a good zombie film as well.
It's a good storyteller, yeah. It's definitely a very good zombie movie.
That's what happens. When it comes to it,
In the thing.
oh, maybe they did. So in the back, there is a
light brown jacket.
cool story.
We're not the first. We definitely won't be the last. We'd like to welcome you. Not another conspiracy cast.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to another episode of Not Another Conspiracy Podcast. In Michigan, we have Dean Sauter.
Dean, hi.
And he can breathe through his nose this week.
I can breathe, and it doesn't hurt as much as it did last time. Still hurts, though, but I'm doing great.
And in York, we have Mr. JJ Jackson.
Hello.
As we all return, as us UK-based members of the podcast team return to lockdown in 4 days' time.
And in Southend on Sea, we have Mr. Ben Mills. The Southend werewolf himself.
Yes.
I
don't know what come over me. I just wanted a rugby tackle of cover.
I still can't believe that's a thing.
It's a thing.
Like,
I've not done any more research into it either. I was like,
It came up about 3 times in conversation, and I'd never heard it before. But maybe I've just completely blocked it out. Yeah. But I think my friends secretly listen to our podcast, but they don't like telling anyone. So they're like, "Oh, the Southend werewolf, yes."
Yeah, I have heard of
you've heard
that.
of it, have you? Like, yeah, I don't know where.
I don't know where.
I find it funny that I have also recently found out. If he's listening, Jam, old friend of mine one of my first real friend that I met over here in the US when before I'd even moved over here. We've rekindled our bromance, and I found out that he's a viewer as well. It's funny that you mentioned it, JJ. Like, a lot of our own friends are actually watching our podcast, but some of them are like, "I'm not conspiracy theorist. Nah, I believe in
I just
COVID."
don't want to tell anyone. They just miss us.
Someone bring it up in a pub.
Because we're all in lockdown. Well, we are now in England. Well, technically.
I'm reopening the Cinnamons pub.
Yeah?
I'm just be sneaking people in. Come to my pub in the garden. Bring your own beer.
First thing Friday. There's just loads of police around it. Helicopters. It's like people queuing up at Ben. All the Patreons just queuing up outside Ben's house.
Yeah, if you are a Patreon member, you do get a free pint of whatever beer is on tap at the time at the Cinnamons anytime you want. Only one though, and then you have to fuck off.
Yeah.
Unless you're like,
that's it.
Probably all lock. What did they do? So we're going into full lockdown, right? Dean, I don't know if Ben was saying.
Yes.
Last time you were only allowed to buy like 6 beers, 2 toilet rolls, everything else rationed, like 1 tin of tuna, one
handful
so
of peanuts.
You've got
from
2
the
different
bar.
types of ham. You can only have 1 type of ham. I was like, but there's 2 different. I thought it was 2 of the same item. Yeah, but they're both ham, aren't they? Okay.
You just have to find an ingredient on one that say that your children are allergic to, and you can't eat the one ingredient in one of them, and one ingredient in the other one like household allergies.
So I've had a cold this week, and you're not allowed to sell like certain amount of paracetamol to one person. Well, I went and bought Night Nurse, the liquid, and Night Nurse capsules because I like to get absolutely out of it before I go to sleep when I've got a cold, so I don't wake
That's why
up.
I smoke this.
Yeah, so
that's why I smoke that.
They went, "Oh, my wife can't take tablets, so she has the liquid and I have the capsules." And he was like, "Oh, okay then." And I was like, "Yes, so, yes, I win.
Again, like the pharmacist was just like, That guy's making crocodile.
One time, and we'll get into the episode really soon, but one time a few friends, we went and did like a Harry Potter drinking game. I don't know why. With me, Matt Marlowe, and my mate Baz. And basically, we'd made our own potions out of alcohol. They were cocktails, but we called them potions.
Fucking hell.
This was 12 years ago. Right? And
In the
and
flat?
no, this is in Marlowe's flat just after he moved out.
Oh, yeah.
And my one was night nurse, vodka, Red Bull, which is like, already you shouldn't be drinking vodka Red Bull because it'll fucking kill you.
And you drink night nurse with it.
Yeah, put a night nurse in it and then top it up with like orange squash to make it taste nice. Oh,
That is literally what Lil Wayne drinks. He drinks like
scissor.
What is it? Yeah. Purple drink.
Were you doing lines of
drink.
Lemsip?
Cuddy.
Oh,
Were you doing lines of Lemsip on the side?
But then we run out of night nurse and we just started pouring like whatever was in Marlowe's cupboards into these drinks. And it was just we started walking to the Alex at like it was just about 4 PM by the time we got two films, Harry Potter.
What the fuck?
Absolutely out of our minds, talking gibberish, and we like started walking to the Alex, and there's just video footage of us all throwing up in different parts of Warrior Square car park, and then going into the Alex, and then wondering why they wouldn't let us in. You can't come in.
Double
Why?
dropping paracetamol.
Because you guys have been
on the way out.
uploading pictures of yourself on the internet drinking pharmaceutical drugs. You can't come in. Right.
I was going to say, Drew was probably friends with you all.
He was, yeah. He was like, I've just seen all the videos. There's no way you're coming in. I was like, oh.
Fucking hilarious. Yeah, we saw the Lemsip as well. Oh, fuck.
Oh my god.
Yeah, I reckon I had like probably about 500 grams of paracetamol. I was absolutely out of it. It was like, don't go to sleep.
Dude.
You shouldn't go to sleep. Stay awake. Anyway,
I don't know what
I
to
was
think
just
of
like,
you.
hang on a second, isn't there 500 grams of paracetamol in one anyway? But no,
no,
it's 500 milligrams.
Yeah, it was a lot of paracetamol. But
10
you know,
paracetamol.
that's 5 grams.
Oh yeah.
And about 100 paracetamols, I reckon.
Amazing.
It was a lot. But the drowsiness thing that's what we were doing as well. When we ran out of, I shouldn't really say this because it's mental.
I can say it.
We ran out of the night nurse, so we started crushing up Puritan. Fever medicine and pouring that in there. Oh fuck.
I love how you're just like, I probably shouldn't say this.
It's pretty
Like,
yeah, I think it's,
hay fever tablets,
you
like
know,
the next level.
it
Gateway
fucks
drugs.
me up. Like you know when you're like sleeping awake, like you know when you like pass out, like, things are happening around you. And, like I didn't know if I dreamed that or not.
You know
I tell you
when
what, I could
you're
breathe
sleeping
really
awake.
well though.
I could breathe really well. Oh, stop. Seeking logic and nearly overdosing on fucking cabinet drugs.
I had a sore throat this morning when I woke up, but now those
Now
fairies.
I'm addicted to heroin.
Now I'm addicted to cough drops.
Yeah.
I was just about to say that's probably why none of us have got coronavirus because stupid shit like that. Made yourself immune forever. to
Yeah.
everything.
Oh, man.
Just got a paracetamol
Okay.
addiction. Right. Anyway,
Oh, man. Anyway, welcome everybody.
why are there no painkillers in the jungle? Because
I
the
know it,
paracetamol.
Oh, fuck off.
Moving swiftly on to today's topic, and
Thank
if you're
you.
a member of the Discord, you know already that we're going to be talking about the most famous serial killer of all time.
The infamous. Hold on. Dun, 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 dun.
Do it.
Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, I've waited weeks for that. I've waited weeks
good.
for that.
Yeah, 130 years ago, his crimes were committed, and they are still probably the most famous crimes of any serial
Committed in
killer.
Great Britain. that
I
have
reckon definitely in
gone,
Britain, yeah. But like, I
yeah.
reckon everyone knows who Jack the Ripper is.
Yeah. So I've got a tiny.
No one knows who he is. That's the problem.
Right, yeah. They know what Jack the Ripper is, but they don't particularly or possibly do not know who. So I've got a little paragraph.
I think I know who he is.
I think I do as well, but obviously.
I actually don't know who Jack the Ripper is that they're talking about. I'm very I was thinking for a long time of Peter Sutcliffe.
The Yorkshire Ripper.
They didn't have audio recording abilities in the 1800s. I was like, you're no closer to finding me than you were 20 years ago, Jack. I was just
it's funny. Me and Ben were saying earlier that it's interesting. We'll get to this a little bit after, but it's interesting that you, JJ, don't have as much knowledge or interest as what me and Ben do, and obviously it makes sense for where we each live in the country of England.
Yeah.
But
so Peter Sutcliffe is from your end.
He's from
is he like the Jack
Ripper,
the Ripper? Is he like the Jack the Ripper of your area?
Well, they were just basically we had Jack the Ripper, now we've got the Yorkshire Ripper. Yeah. There was never the Scottish Ripper.
No, right.
Do you go on Peter Sutcliffe walks?
Yeah, the Geordie Ripper.
Do they do Peter Sutcliffe walks around Yorkshire?
That's never crossed my mind, actually.
Afro and a mustache. I've got an interesting fact,
the worst haircut in history.
This is the one where he got caught with his trousers and a hole in them.
Just ripped his trousers.
That's where he got the name.
Yeah. Just wore trousers that were too small for him on long walks, and just so happened to kill prostitutes. Were they prostitutes? I can't remember.
They were ladies of the night.
Yeah. My dad
is Peter Sutcliffe.
Yeah. I'm gonna send you a picture of him around the time Peter Sutcliffe was doing his things. And
pubes on top and on his face.
Yeah. There is no... literally looks like an old school microphone. Just and that
What the killer look like? I don't know, but reminded me of microphone.
Just on a witness drawing. Just a long shaft and then a big bulbous head.
Microphone with two arms sticking out
and a hammer.
It was pretty dark. Love, that's just a microphone.
A fucking microphone with a wig.
I don't know if it's a shrub or a microphone.
But yeah, my dad, I nearly said this is an interesting fact, but I think I've got two stories confused. He didn't get taken in for questioning, but he should have done, because he actually looks identical to Peter Sutcliffe.
Peter Sutcliffe. Do you know Peter Sutcliffe was interviewed 4 or 5 times?
Yes, he was.
And they just totally disregarded him because they didn't have that. There wasn't that database to show that he'd been in
he'd been in and out that many times. Yeah,
about it. Anyway,
was he did he get a higher scorecard than Jack the Ripper?
He did, yeah.
One for the Yorkshire team.
Oh, they did. I always thought he had 5
I thought he got 13 or 9.
Who?
Peter.
Oh, no, I thought there was few. I thought there was only a handful.
That is fully a t-shirt we should fucking make soon. A baseball scorecard.
13 at least 13 women.
Oh,
at least.
Man. All right, okay.
So the Yorkshire Ripper is better than Jack the Ripper.
He's better?
We're not going to do this episode now. We're just going to stop it and we'll do the Yorkshire Ripper next week.
Right, okay, I'm going to introduce everybody that's probably listening. Some people obviously know who Jack the Ripper is, but that's what we're going to get onto. We're going to get into the life of Londoners that were surrounded by, Jack the Ripper was part of, We're going to go into the 1888 era of Whitechapel. We're going to go into the victims, and hopefully, if this isn't a two-parter, we will also get to the suspects and who our suspects are. But anyway, Jack the Ripper is one of the world's most infamous and faceless serial killers. The name has traversed the legends of time for over 130 years, as Ben mentioned a moment ago, and it still remains one of crime's biggest unsolved mysteries. During the summer of 1888, a string of murders were committed that echoed fear among the residents of Whitechapel, especially the ladies of the night, prostitutes, whichever you may refer to them, brass or Roxanne.
Or now we call them sex workers.
They are sex workers.
Yes, it's 2020. Okay.
Sex work is work.
The less dead, as they are referred to a lot as well.
Right. And to this day, there have been countless theories as to who could possibly have been responsible for such atrocities, from local barbers to slaughterhousemen to the elites of the royal family. That is possibly Jack the Ripper. Now, the life within Whitechapel in 1888, as probably we can guess weren't nice.
It was grey.
Across
very
the whole,
grey.
Very, very grey, sooty,
Smog.
dewy.
As well, a lot of smog.
A lot of smog. Looks like industrialist China right now, sort of
Whitechapel
thing.
specifically was
Dyer.
yeah.
Grim.
The Kieran Dyer and the Eric Dyer of London.
Even if you go there now, it's been gentrified a lot. But if you go walk down any of like Brick Lane and down any of those alleyways and sideways, it's still pretty like narrow and dark. It's not.
Yeah, some of them still exist.
Yeah, a lot of it does.
Especially.
Some of the murder sites are now Starbucks or they're
or
expensive
a parking
apartments. Or the parking structure is now gone.
It is. Oh, really?
It's just recently been knocked down.
That's Mary Kelly's location, isn't it?
Yeah.
So they don't do murders there anymore. They're like robbing people.
Yeah, basically.
£5 for a coffee.
Yeah, lockdown though. Lockdown. So non-essentials are all closed.
Of the areas of Whitechapel, of the locations of some of the murders that we will get back to as well, Mitre Square is still one that is very similar to
the same cobbled
what it looked.
streets, apparently.
Same cobbled street, and also what is interesting is there's an alleyway that is commonly thought to have been the escape route of one of the killings, escape route from the scene, and that is still same cobbled walls, same cobbled street. So you can go to that area today and get an idea of what it looked like. So life in Whitechapel during 1888 was depicted as an area with a that were no better than savages, and so most people were referred to as criminal persons or populating a lawless street or slums where not even the middle class would consider frequenting.
Except for a bit of rumpy pumpy.
Whatever
love me.
Whatever rumpy pump is. So it wasn't nice. A nice area. But what's
bloody lovely now.
But what's interesting is a lot of London in general, we'll get to how we believe that, or it's obvious that newspapers in and around the area were hamming a lot of stuff up because of competition. But areas in London in general in the 1800s, all right, toward the 20th century, because we're dealing in 1888, a lot of London was still very similar to what Whitechapel was. Even saying West, North, and places away from East London, papers were reporting that well-to-do areas were still a little, the west of London, where the more aristocratic populace of London resided, there were still awful areas that were very similar to Whitechapel. So they
believed that one of the main reasons why Whitechapel was bad was because it was part of the urbanisation of London. So
correct.
It was people coming in from because all the outskirts were really rural. Work and stuff was going down. So
yes.
Everyone started moving inwards.
And
they even said Whitechapel probably wasn't the worst area, but it was one of the worst areas.
It's correct.
Way overpopulated. And,
so
all the research I did was just about the area.
It's good because
about Jack the Ripper.
Because the write-up I've got here on my notes that I want to go through, so it's more of an introduction into the life within Whitechapel. Now, that little quote that you just had, JJ, I'll bring out the statistic of how populated London was at that time. So, on the outskirts of London, in and around the outside of London, you had an estimated 50 people per acre, and this was within a census of 18. I think it was 8. I missed the date, unfortunately, but it was in and around that time frame. It was alleged that there were 50 people per acre, whereas in Whitechapel there was 175 persons per acre. So that's an absurd increase in people.
Yeah.
And within
definitely not social distanced.
No, of course not. And within the killing grounds of Dorset Street, in and around the area where the canonical 5 were discovered, Dorset Street particularly, there was an estimated 800 people per acre. 800. And that's, as you were just saying, not difficult to believe, JJ, considering the amount of influx as well from immigrants that were coming into the country and unable to find any better places to live because it was
London was like the biggest port in Europe, I believe. I think it was
at the time
the biggest port in Europe at that time.
Correct, yeah.
And it was the biggest city. It was the biggest city as well. It was like the most popular.
Yeah.
So Whitechapel was not a nice place to even frequent, let alone live in. But I agree with JJ. It probably wasn't the worst place of all places in London, and I think this may have just elevated how bad it was because of the killings that occurred during that summer. Murders. So, one thing I want to get onto as well is, now that I just touched upon the fact that it might not have been too bad as to what it actually was. At the beginning of 1880, the newspaper industry really started to take off. There were advances in technology and changes in taxation that drove the cost of newspapers down. So journalism was becoming more flamboyant, informal, provocative, and sensational. So there was obviously a need to sell papers in a very populated area where there were a lot of newspapers, locals, and evening papers starting. So considering there was no radio or television, it meant that newspapers was the go-to form of entertainment and informative information. In 1884, there were 15 evening papers, 9 weeklies, and 383 London locals. Now, let's...
I mean, there we go. That's it. We've solved it. It was Rupert Murdoch.
Yeah, it was just sensational.
Rupert Murdoch, the vampire, just killed some people just to sell them newspapers. That was it.
So,
End of podcast. Nice to see you guys.
Yeah, bye.
Well, the suspect, I believe, did have ties to Australia, so maybe it was Rupert Murdoch.
Rupert, because he is an Aussie, and he is an ex-con. Excuse me, sorry, apologies, derogatory term. But
cunt.
Now, me and Ben have worked in London, and I imagine JJ has obviously been to London. Now, in the evenings...
Have you been here, JJ? To the big smoke?
Jolly
What's
old
the famous Alan Partridge? Or I spell it Shithole.
Shithole! Come to London where you be underappreciated.
So... one thing that you probably notice about walking around London of an evening, especially if you worked there and you were commuting home, was the amount of free newspapers that you get thrown in your face. Like, even
I thought you were
now...
going to say all the prostitutes.
All the brass just throwing themselves at you.
Prostitutes.
Riff-raff of the prozzies.
It's very interesting to think, like, clearly those numbers there, 15 evening newspapers, 9 weeklies, and 383 London locals in and around that time. It's an annoyance to be handed a free newspaper when you're making your way out of or into an underground, let alone living in an area where there was like 383 London locals. There must have been a paperboy on the corner of every single street.
Read all about it. Another
It's
brass
crazy.
dead.
And
I guess that must coincide with the invention of the printing press then.
No, of course. There were technological advances, so it was cheaper to produce, it was quicker to produce, so then, and it was the only form of entertainment and information. Anyone was going to take an opportunity that could find a moment for a...
Have you guys ever have you ever put a letterpress...
No.
broadsheet press together?
I used to
fuckery involved.
I used to work as a printer when it was my first job.
Oh yes, you did, Ben. Yeah,
So I know I used to run a plate Heidelberg printing press. So nightmare, but like it's still easier than writing 100,000 copies by hand.
This is an interesting insight, even now.
Well,
I did my final major project on printing, and I did a broadsheet newspaper based on that era of printing, and I was so proud of it. It took me about 3 weeks to put together, full broadsheet, print it out, all back to front. Guy had to. So there's 300 people doing that every fucking day.
Can you imagine
they're just gonna keep using it. Ripper kills again. Like they're just gonna change words.
Put again
out and just
in
leave
there.
The press. Fucking bullshit.
Now it's an interesting insight as well, considering how many years ago did you obviously do this broadsheet, JJ? And you saying
15?
it was
well, back to front.
No, but what I'm saying is
but I had to pass it off as modern art, so it worked.
The technology today, it should almost be simple, and you just said it was a complete and utter ball ache. Yeah.
Oh no! So basically, I did it to reflect on the past. Whereas
right, okay, okay.
Basically, this is why every graphic designer now is just a fucking keyboard jockey, because they're like, oh yeah, I'm a graphic designer. All right, you've done letterpress. No, I use Photoshop. All right, cool. There you go. It's not hard.
No, right. But back then,
did you just type out a full paragraph? Oh, was it backwards? Yeah, just flip it. It's fine.
Yeah, exactly. Whereas back then, it's
fucking
like
bullshit. Oh, you got a fucking what does he call it? A first at university for graphic design. That's really nice. Because you didn't have to you didn't have to tweezer every individual letter out the fucking block and turn it around, did you? Or in fact, move the whole sheet. It was like in Arabic. The whole thing was backwards.
Oh my god.
It's your fault. That was your fault.
Yeah, you've got no one.
Fault, but everyone else was like tap 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 tap.
You've got no 13-year-old to blame it on to take his half a penny away from him.
Fuck, I know.
Bugger off, Billy.
I'm just saying, imagine it. Like,
imagine it, yeah.
130 years ago.
But they probably had like more than one person
doing
doing it. Yeah.
So through the years, as we've just divulged, through the years, it had also been claimed that journalists and news writers were hamming up its lack of qualities to either sell newspapers.
No journalist would ever do such a thing. That is the journalist integrity is first and foremost what they believe in. No one has ever done that.
People felt that what was going on at the time was kind of something for the people, because they were hamming up like life in and around Whitechapel. They either believed to sell newspapers, or it was a government to bring government change to the area, to highlight what was going on. And there was they called it like a form of protest to the forgotten people of London, or at least in the East End. The Globe, the Pall Mall Gazette.
Press, I guess.
Yes,
like what you would call free press now.
Right, yeah, but kind of free press compared to what it used to cost, because they were saying that the East End, the Globe and the Pall Mall Gazette would cost you then around half a penny. I'm not too sure what that is in fucking today's day and age, but it was considered fairly, fairly cheap. Now, in 1885, the Pall Mall Gazette helped change a law on prostitution. The campaigning journalism of W.T. Stead harnessed public outrage to political ends. So that's where, Ben, I'm saying that they could have used it for a sense of good, because an excerpt reading, London's lust annually uses up many thousands of women who are literally killed and made away with life sacrificing, with living sacrifices slain in the service of vice. Basically, the excerpt saying that women are being murdered on the streets purely out of a desire for sex. And the journalist was like campaigning this thoroughly in the newspapers, and it ended up resulting in Parliament passing legislation that the age of consent would be raised for girls from the ages of 13 to 16 to what we see today in this day and age. Right. Sense of good. We're now stopping at the end of the...
It's not good because it closed the brothels and it put them on the streets. And
just what I was getting to, exactly. So it all sounds well and good. Don't touch kids, and it's like now it led to the closure and the job loss to a lot of people that made a living in that case.
And made it unsafe.
Right, so it resulted in Parliament passing legislation of the age rate from 13 to 16. The changes suppressed trafficking, prostitution, but it also stopped the brothels, as Ben said. So that which led to women of the night to apply their trade in common lodging houses or on the streets, indirectly creating the Whitechapel of Jack the Ripper. So you could say that, the journalists at the time they were campaigning for change in their local constituencies, but in the end, inadvertently, were leading to what we again know as quite possibly the most infamous serial killer to ever grace, I say, Britain or Earth in general. Like the biggest serial killer that has remained unsolved for so many years and leaves until now. It was the newspaper industry. Boom, there you go. They created it.
I would say that it is definitely. Like when I was trying to do research, every American podcast that was about murder that had one episode because they realised they were shit at podcasts. Yeah. There were so many about
They realised they didn't just keep doing them like we did.
Yeah.
But it's because as well that there's it's not such a direct story, and that lays testament to how many newspapers and journalists and the sensationalism that was being written about him. You know, it's like there's so many different aspects that you can cover. But as again, also, it was at a period where technology was slightly advancing in certain respects, in certain ways. We were just heading towards the 20th century. Things were changing, so there were a lot of...
Industry was huge, wasn't it? Industry was like, obviously, oil, not oil, coal and whatnot was... I'm guessing that is classed as the beginning of the industrial era.
Right. Or at least it was... Halloweeny black cat, Easter egg.
Yeah, I just hired her for tonight.
Perfect. So,
you know, I had the tin can and the rosary beads and the glow sticks.
You're our Easter egg, dude.
That's actually Jack the Ripper.
I was going to say you hadn't ordered a prostitute in.
Cat the Nipper.
She's coming later. Well, maybe I'll have to wait for the second part now.
In the Star newspaper on August 31st, 1888, there was a story with such headlines reporting a revolting murder, a ghastly crime, the deed of a maniac. Papers wouldn't usually publish sensational titles like this, but it was only the beginning of which a string of murders would capture the fascination of not only the people of London, but the local media and journalists that some say has led to the beginnings of sensationalist news that we read today. It's really damn interesting in the sense that, as we were saying, technology is advancing, printing machines are more accessible. It's allowing more pressings to be made, resulting in so many newspapers. And then this one thing occurs that then throws an absolute pot of gold into the laps of every single newspaper.
Well, it's the beginning of the original true crime boom, I guess.
Yeah, you could look at it that way.
Because it was like, it's sort of like we can read about it, we can see the ghastly details of what's going on.
Because it's human nature to be that it's car crash material, car crash television, as they would call it.
Yeah, it is. You know, you have to look, didn't you? Like you don't want to, but you've got to.
Right.
And I mean, we're doing a podcast about these things that they reported on 130 years ago. Like
exactly. So
they got it right.
They did, and it's whether or not it was a case of newspapers hamming up a particular story or a group of stories, or it is genuinely something that occurred in a moment of time where, for something like that to fall in the lap of newspaper printers and journalists, that was a pot of gold to everybody. And then it was obviously a race to be the first one to report this, or to be of such details, or to be the first person to point a finger at a suspect. And that's probably why there are so many damn suspects, and as to why this could be a two-parter episode, because it's that absurd. But anyway, moving on. Police reports over the decades have been either lost or destroyed. So most of the facts and information that we take in are what was reported back via the local media. Some people even believe that Jack may never have even existed at all, paying testament to what we were just saying. It could have been the boom of the technology at the time, and journalists, being the smart demons that they are, sitting there going, oh, look, a murder. What's to say that we connect the next ones together in such a way?
I'm gonna put it on the fact that we've probably done how many podcasts, and the police usually are involved in them, and evidence always goes missing when the police are involved. Yeah, just saying.
And that leads. Although you're not interested, JJ, that kind of leads to.
I am interested.
He is interested.
No.
You don't give a fuck.
No, when you were saying
I just did no research because I was like, I feel that we'll just all get the same one. So
right,
I did research. I did some research.
But that kind of connects to who I know your suspect is, and Ben know you. But we'll obviously sort of save that for obviously surprise of the viewers, because I know that there are some viewers, particularly Victoria. She's going to be very, very critical on our breakdown of this, because she's very.
I think a lot of people have got that. It's kind of like football teams. And like,
yes,
it's like this is my suspect, but I had suspects before.
I did too.
Like, and then I was like, when you actually research it, it's pretty obvious that it's this person, or it's one of these three, maybe. I don't think any more than three.
Yeah.
But then there's the really fun the fun suspects, which you want it to be, like Walter Sickert and Prince Albert.
Prince Albert, yep.
Yeah, and like or Winston Churchill's dad and like or granddad.
Exactly, yeah.
Like this, but it's not that. Just letting I'm ruining everything now. It's not them. It's none of them. It's none of them.
So like many people like say this as well, for the fact that there are so many suspects is thanks to ripperology.
Oh,
yes,
God.
folks, there is a thing called ripperology. And
if you refer to yourself as a ripperologist, you are the most boring person in any event that you go to. You'll be the most boring person there. It's a fact.
It's funny.
I mean, you're probably one of those people who only go to events with other ripperologists.
Yeah, and then you're all the most boring people.
You're all just in an echo chamber
capes with a red lining.
And you end up being an echo chamber at the end of the day, because people report as well, like a lot of people that are critical on ripperologists, they say themselves are leading themselves down the rabbit hole that they don't want to end up at the fact that Jack the Ripper potentially could not have existed, because each ripperologist that tries to sit there and say, like, it was this guy, I know why, everyone else is wrong, then leads to every single other person's suspect having discrepancies and inconsistencies with the stories and contradictions that funnel the true or the one story that they all lead from. It's almost like they're breaking it down themselves and like proving it all wrong, and it's bad. I don't like that. I don't like that they're doing it.
A really funny image of some people who are listening. Dean raised his arm. I just had this really funny image of them all doing that in a circle, and there's just like black capes everywhere, and they're like falling on their faces, and they're all getting tangled up like, no,
I'm the real ripperologist.
And then like one of them just scuttling off into the darkness.
I'm the ripperologist.
It's like it reminds me of the character from South Park, who's reality turns up and he fucking storms the party, and he's like, "What's that? You look validation? You don't care about anything. Fuck you. Stop like looking for popular points or something." That's kind of what Jack the Ripper looked like to me, or at least I imagine.
So basically, every American podcast, because they all seem to. So while you guys were doing your research, I just had like. I was listening to podcasts that were like 30 minutes long.
Oh, I've done the same ones.
Like, it was in Whitehall, and then Jack the Ripper, and that was it. Over. I was like,
they just read it. And then on April the 3rd, 1888, Emma Smith, a local prostitute, is attacked by a local gang at the junction of Osborne Street and Brick Lane.
They're very much like
we just read some things that happened.
Well, I listened to 30 of those.
They're very much like the serial podcast approach.
Yeah.
Have you ever seen? Yeah, you know the one I'm talking about. Then
the funny thing is, they're a serial podcast approach, but they only brought out one podcast because the first one was so shit.
I hate how that creation of podcasts has led to these really pretentious sounding podcasts where it's this really crappy royalty free music in the background,
and they've always got a piano on the Jack the Ripper one. It's just like dun, 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 and it's like what?
And then
like
they're
everyone
like
in England
random
they just
street
think that
sounds.
we just play pianos and shit.
Right, it's just Chaz and Dave, nothing but Chaz and Dave.
They'll be talking about a street, and like they'll fade up like some soundscapes of a street.
Read all
about it.
Yeah, that's
it.
Like,
fancy a trick.
It's like, and it's just like rowdy pub hooliganism sound, like
and then like a police whistle and then footsteps.
Yeah. 2 for half a nickel. Now, what's that?
Really slow Cuban heels.
Yeah. And just hearing
and
a copper
waft of a cape.
Yeah. And a copper batting someone over the back of the head. I know your mother.
You're going down on Bailey.
So that will save you listening to any other podcasts about Jack the Ripper after listening to ours, because we've just done them all at once.
There you go, done. But that is the end, at least, of the segment of us explaining what we can come to expect of the area of Whitechapel in 1888. You know, it weren't nice. It was horrible. It was downtrodden.
Grim.
It wasn't a nice place to get murdered in, let alone live in. So
the streets were red with blood and sperm.
Oh God!
Read the headlines every day when Jack the streets ran pink with blood mixed with sperm. Prostitutes being fucked and then cut in half.
there was no sexual gratification from Jack on his crimes.
I hate how
They
true
say
that
that.
sounded.
I say that, but
Right.
So there
coming in
were,
his trap.
Yeah.
right, there were a lot. So we're going to start moving on to now, obviously, the gruesome detail. Now, canonically,
murder.
Canonically, there are 5 victims of Jack the Ripper,
Yeah.
but
5 confirmed.
5 confirmed victims, but there are countless more that are involved, or at least categorized under the
There are a lot more
Whitechapel murders.
if it was my suspect, there are a lot more killings.
Can I just ask a quick question?
Sure,
So
sure.
this is where I switched off with everything.
When the actual killings started.
Because the best parts I switched off. So Jack the Ripper never claimed any murders himself, right? There was no pen note. There were only which one podcast kept saying
There's one
he
that
had his WOs. Don't know what that means.
there's
What's
one
WO
there's
mean?
one letter that could well be from Jack because it contained a half of a human kidney.
Yes.
But we
Yeah,
know
well-
that one. We'll come on to that one.
But there's
Yes.
lots of
So-
other letters that claimed murders that were written by journalists.
There were hundreds.
So the
There were thousands,
5,
millions.
The 5 in question. The reason why people think it was Jack was because the traits of the murder were the same, right? Am I right? in
Very,
thinking that?
yes. They felt
But
that.
the other ones were just a bit slapdash. They were just murders,
right.
or
and that-
not all the
Right, yeah.
not all
Yeah.
the elements.
There's one of the 5 conical ones that had none of the things, but they think he got disturbed and had to go.
Right, yeah. We'll get to all
I'm
of
just
that.
double checking because
Yes,
this is
that's
where
fine. Yeah, that's cool.
every single thing I read, I just was like, I'm sick of people making their own mind up about it. Like it's not an opinion, it's a fact. Like if that's the truth, let's deal with that. But
Sure, of course,
It was
yeah.
like everyone was
So-
like, "Nah, I believe there was 12 people who we murdered." It was like, yeah, that's not criminal investigation, I'm afraid.
No, so I took 2 victims that are part of the Whitechapel murder case, but a lot of them, these 2 particular, they get brought up frequently as either catalysts or possibly actually victims of Jack the Ripper. So
Yeah, like almost like with the typical serial killer thing is that they will get more, their crimes will escalate and become more violent, or they'll get into
Yes.
their pattern and they'll
More
start
daring.
So
Yeah.
that normally the first victims of a serial killer will either be an animal, or there'll be an attack but there'll be no murder, or there'll be a murder but it won't follow the same patterns as the rest of them do as
Exactly,
they escalate their killings and they get more comfortable in their stabby
If they
things.
get
Stabby,
sloppy,
yeah.
Yeah.
get
So-
the Ripper got sloppy.
He got,
Well, they
he
get
got
sloppy
rumbled.
towards the end as well.
Yes, very. Ugh. Anyway, Emma
Like
Smith.
actually sloppy.
Sloppy second.
Particularly. So Emma Smith. This occurred on April 4th, 1888. Now, this is a very quick one, time-stamped also. So, April 4th, 1888 at 1:30 a.m., Emma Smith, a local prostitute, is attacked by a local gang at the junction of Osborne Street and Brick Lane. She was robbed and beaten savagely by a group of 3 men. Apparently, one was of 19 years old. The others were of middle-aged. Same day, 4 to 5 o'clock a.m., Emma Smith arrives back at her lodging house at 18 George Street, where the residents persuade her to visit the nearby London hospital as her injuries are considered distressing. Now, in those lodging houses, obviously, they were tiny, tiny rooms and often populated by, like, lots of people. Like, I can't think of how many, like, a number in general, but it was at a point where people would rent out corners of rooms just to be able to get people in and money in. And
I heard a real good one. This is hilarious. So you said they rented out corners.
Yes,
of
they
the
room. Out corners.
Like they
yeah,
hired out corners. Those were some of the most expensive lodgings at these places. One guy put up a pole with another pole, like a string of poles with rope in between them. And he would charge the people
to sit on the.
not even to sit on it, to lean on it. 2 pence they would have to pay to lean on this rope and sleep.
Right,
like,
now I'm right.
The guy
Okay.
gets up and his body falls. Like, one person gets up from that fucking Jenga of, like, sleeping, and they're all falling.
I often wondered what that scene was in From Hell, where all the girls are all sleeping on the chair and he just removes the rope and they all fall off. I was like, what that was a really bizarre scene to put in there.
The actual end pole. So this is what I was talking about. Was I did research, but I did specific research on things that excited me. This was one of them. So the pole is basically like a fence.
Yeah.
And there's holes in all these poles with rope.
Right.
And at the end, they describe it as I don't know what the word is, but you know, like when you used to get
like
folders in school.
Yeah.
No, you know, you used to
like
get
a
a folder
binder
in school, and you used to get a piece of string with a bar on it, and you used to put the bar in, and it like locked it in.
Yeah.
Apparently, when the time was up, the guy just pulled this thing out from this like little latch, and all the rope just.
That's fucking terrible. Can you imagine someone?
If they wanted to sleep again, he'd go around and charge them another penny.
So that's how bad it was, and like, fucking hell.
So good.
I'm glad you brought. I'm glad you researched that.
You'd pay way more money to be involved in that now in Shoreditch. They'd open a bar that was that in Shoreditch now, and people would just pay for it.
That's crazy. I'm glad because that, like I mentioned earlier, I've always been curious about that one particular scene in From Hell where that rope just and they all go, and I was like, am I meant to laugh at that? Is that
so
actual factual?
So
like,
many elements of this era of time that are just so obscure
and really like revolting towards other humans. Yeah, it's terrible.
Yeah.
So
it's
anyway,
basically
okay.
like you see it like now on you see it on Facebook now when shit like that happens, and it's like one tiny village in Africa. Like in London, like now, like Ben just said, like in Shoreditch, now guys are like fucking paying to do like they're probably paying like £20 a minute to
live in the day of the life of brass in Jack the Ripper Street.
Yeah, that's it. They're probably paying for the gutter water as a beer. They're just like, yeah, I love the gutter water, and it's literally is gutter water. It's 12 quid. I want to lean on the pole with a rope.
No, well, I want to lean on the pole and fall on my face afterwards.
So good.
So it then gets to around 9 a.m. and Emma Smith's been taken to. She's taken herself to the hospital. By 9 a.m. though, she slips into a coma of peritonitis, and she later dies from this. An inquest was opened into Emma Smith's murder, and although she almost certainly wasn't murdered by Jack the Ripper, she's the first name of the Whitechapel murders that were later included in the murders by Jack the Ripper. So that's why she is significant. Next one is Martha Tabram, and now this is possibly, there's a lot of debate over her murder being the beginning of Jack, or possibly being Jack's first murder. So August the 7th, 1:30 a.m. This is where we're now going to get into like a lot of details because I think it's quite vital when it comes to it. So 1:30 a.m., August the 7th, Martha Tabram and another local prostitute, Martha Tabram, a local prostitute, is found stabbed to death on the landing of George Yard. The night of her murder, where she was seen with another prostitute named Mary Ann Connolly, known as Pearly Pole, because she was apparently on the masculine side. I don't know where that name comes from to be masculine. Maybe Polish were referred to being as masculine back then. And
I thought it was
Pearly Pole.
Pearly Pole. Not Paul, but Pole.
Paul.
Right, P-O-L-L.
Paul.
Pole.
Oh, is it?
As in
Yeah,
poll
Pole.
tax.
Oh,
Yeah.
I've heard loads of people refer to her as Pearly Paul.
Right,
And the reason
I got poll
thought it was
tax.
to do with her, like, obviously, pearl necklace is sperming on someone's throat. And
I don't think it's got that though.
But that's why when I was doing this research and typing it out, I was like, why Pearly Pole? Masculine? What? I didn't get it. Well, if you do, JJ, like
Maybe because it sounds a bit like
pole
Paul.
is slang for a cock, and pearl is slang for a sperm.
A pole.
I'm a fucking moron.
Yeah,
Thank
not
you.
like a Polish person, like the poles that they sleep on for a penny.
I can't believe I didn't see that.
Right.
But anyway, she was with Pearly Pole. Pearly Dick, we'll call her. Pearly Dick.
Spermy cock, we'll call her.
They met two guardsmen, a corporal and a private, and went drinking with them along pubs of Whitechapel Road. At some stage between 11:30pm and 11:45pm, the group split into couples. A quick round of bargaining took place, prices were agreed, and Martha disappeared with her client through the sinister arch that led into George Yard, today known as Gunthorpe Street, whilst Pearly Pole led her client into the next dark thoroughfare along Angel Alley. According to the East London Advertiser, George Yard was one of the most dangerous streets in locality, but for a seasoned streetwalker like Martha Tabram, it offered a reasonable amount of privacy for quick sex acts, which were known as four-penny knee tremblers. I like the knee trembler side of things, but four-penny, like a great slang term. I don't think I've ever
for
referred
anybody
to it.
who doesn't understand the currency in London. 4 pennies is 2 sleeps on a pole at night time. You can sleep twice on a wooden pole or a rope. Governed by one man who just cuts the rope when he's had enough.
So it makes sense as to why women would sell themselves for one knee trembler for 2 nights worth of kip.
Yeah, that's pretty good.
There you go. So is it? It's pretty good value.
Yeah, because how many knee tremblers could you do in a night?
Exactly.
Fair amount, I reckon, if you were.
You could do like 4 tremblers. Knee tremblers. You could do 4 knee tremblers a night and have money left over to get a beer.
And not get pulled by a rope at 1 o'clock or like 9 o'clock in the morning and have your face smashed on some.
Buying
horrible...
a beer in London is expensive now, so imagine back then.
Well, imagine what it was back then, yeah.
Gin, wouldn't they? I'd love a gin.
Yeah.
So, according to the East London... Oh, no, hold on. I read that, sorry. But for a seasoned streetwalker, blah, blah, blah. Earlier that night, a cab driver named Alfred George Crow... Cool name, if I'm honest. Yeah, very cool name. I'm Alfred George Crow. Seen someone lying on the first floor landing of the George Yard buildings, but assumed it was somebody sleeping rough, which was obviously completely common in those times. Miss Hewitt, wife of Francis Hewitt, the building's superintendent, reported seeing nothing untoward after returning home in the early hours. She claims the stairs were unlit and that even while sleeping, her and her husband didn't hear anything. A little after 5 a.m., John Saunders Reeves, a waterside labourer, left his home in George Yard buildings and came down the stairs, finding the body of Martha Tabram. He too noticed the prone form, but as it was now getting light, he was able to see that it was a woman who was lying on her back in a pool of blood. He rushed off to find a police officer. That police officer was Constable T. Barrett, who was within the vicinity of George Yard. Barrett sent John Reeves to fetch a local medic, Dr. Killeen. Is that Killeen? Killeen. Dr. Killeen. He examined the body upon returning and declared her dead, and also gave that his opinion that she had in fact been brutally murdered. It was considered a frenzied attack with 39 stab wounds peppered across from her throat to lower abdomen. Dr.
Please tell me, how old was she?
Oh, was she 39?
She was 39 years old.
Ooh. Very, very, I wasn't aware of that.
And if you add 3 and 9 together, you get 12. And then if you add the 1 and 2, you get 3.
No. Where's the bean can? Where's the fucking bean can? No! There it is! JJ has pulled up a bean can for all the listeners. There it is, the infamous bean can. We might sell them on Patreon.
And if you don't get the reference, it was to our Helia episode.
Documentary. Where things
I thought it was the name of the brothel where these girls worked.
Fuck's sake.
Hells bells!
Okay, so there were 39 stab wounds from the throat to her lower abdomen. Dr. Killeen later told the inquest that the killer had used 2 different blades, the majority of the wounds having been inflicted with an ordinary pocket knife, whilst the deep wounds to her breast had been dealt with some long, strong instrument, which could have been a sword, bayonet, or dagger. Which is interesting because they were with 2 army or military based people, which is again.
So I heard there was only one long puncture, one large puncture. The rest were with a pocket knife.
With a pocket knife, which is and he said these long particular ones could have been from a sword or a bayonet.
Just one with the dagger,
right?
Which was bizarre.
Liver.
Yeah.
It is very, very bizarre. Almost like he knew what he wanted to do
Or he did rapid attacks with the end of the dagger. Maybe he was holding it halfway down just to make sure that they were... And then he just really slowly drove that last one in.
Maybe.
All right, Sutcliffe. Jesus.
It's the Yorkshire Ripper in you, that is.
Significantly, he was also of the belief that sexual intercourse had not recently occurred, thus ruling out rape as a motive for the murder. Now, this is why a lot of people then begin to believe why Martha could have been Jack's first
It does
victim.
sound like it
sounds
be
like
a
daring
first.
attempt.
Yeah.
It sounds like he was... he wanted to try something, but didn't want to go all the way with probably what his desires were.
He didn't know what he was going to do. Yeah, he didn't know what the thing he wanted to do was.
The frenzy being the adrenaline rush of, I'm doing this, we're doing this is happening, and then like, oh shit, do I need to do this now? Like, it sounds like it could be the beginning of. If Jack was the string that led to these 5 other murders, at least. The East London Advertiser commented, the circumstances of this awful tragedy are not only surrounded with the deepest mystery, but there is also a feeling of insecurity to think that in a great city of London, the streets of which are continually patrolled by police, a woman could be foully and horribly killed almost next to the citizens peacefully sleeping in their beds without a trace or clue being left of the villain who did the deed. There appears to not be there appears to be not the slightest trace of the murderer, and no clue has at present been found. So it sounds
just
sorry, JJ.
Just for again, something else that I sort of went into. I don't know if you guys did. Apparently, at the time, they started putting like steel heels on policemen's boots.
Interesting. Yeah. No, I didn't know this.
So they did it to make people aware that they could hear a policeman. Whereas in most of the time, it was the revolution of rubber and like rubber-heeled shoes. So you could essentially run silently. Whereas they put steel on the heels of policemen's boots to make people know that policemen were around.
That's
which
so
for me
interesting.
is kind of a bit silly, but
you'd
be like,
it's like,
oh no, there's a policeman coming. I better finish this murder off, and then run off.
Yeah, it's like the police cars that we see today, like the most obvious looking things. It's like, oh look, I better slow down. Like, whereas over here in America, they're not like that. They'll be like Canton police on the side, but yet they'll just have a pure black like car. So you're oblivious.
But they're okay because they're 7-litre fucking war horses.
yeah.
Doesn't really matter, does it? You're like, well, I don't think my Micra's going to get away from this one.
And then you get shot in the head when they stop you.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
But only if you're black.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, so
the police in America kill lots of black people.
London or whatever. You're at risk of death if you're a prostitute.
Now, where are we with Martha Tabram's murder? I am in the belief that this 75% could be linked to the canonical 5. In my opinion, it seems
like an escalate, like at the beginning of what was to come. Like it's got the stab wound, it's got a bit more frenzy, there's less control. It's almost like he's like two
it might be the
first
test.
It could be his first killing.
My belief
go on.
My belief is I saw a picture of her, and my belief is the guy did his deed, paid her the money, and then realised he'd had an awful time, bit like in GTA.
Yeah.
You have sex with them and then kill them and take all your money back.
But he said there was no sexual intercourse.
I've seen a picture of her. I'd murder her too.
And then his pal, he called his pal and he was just like, fucking hell, look at this hooker that I've just had. And his pal's like a little Weasley one who just like jizzed after one pump. And he just came in with his bayonet and just stabbed her once just for just the last kick. He just like, and they ran off together.
That's interesting. Although
it's a weird thought to have, but yeah.
I was going to say. But she was with only the one. I'm not too sure which, obviously, one
and
she went away with.
This is a lot later in the evening. This is like after 5 a.m. because from what the timelines is no one saw the body until 5 a.m. because someone walked up the stairs.
And
they reckoned I think it was suspected that it was around 2 a.m. that
she had. Right. Okay.
But there've been no signs of sexual intercourse.
But it's interesting as
recently.
well that. Yeah,
well, that doesn't necessarily mean that
could have a small
he
penis.
had sex with her in the vagina.
Right,
Yeah,
and then
could have been in the ear, or one of the stab wounds.
Could have just
maybe that was the big stab wound. He was like, "Well, I'm not going to get my dick in that little hole," and then he slammed that dagger in and was like, "I'll have sex with her chest."
Ladies and gentlemen, this is a
Patreon-funded podcast.
Yes,
and to a degree.
It's also don't let your kids listen. Okay, and if they just listen to that, heed this warning that I've just given now that your kids shouldn't be listening.
It's going to get worse. It's going to get
parents.
worse.
You shouldn't be letting your children listen to podcasts about Jack the Ripper.
Yeah, bad parents. You letting your kids listen out there. There will be references to shagging, open wounds.
We should have really give a kind of a mild disclaimer at the start. And then with the word Ripper at the end and being a serial killer. I think
we've never needed to do it before, but I thought that would be a nice little way to say, sign up for the Patreon. You get loads of really cool things, like these podcasts that we do.
And while you're at it, go and pick up a pair of OG socks.
Hey, OG socks, code NAC,
.co.uk.
20% off. There you go.
Code word NAC.
Thank you very much for the sponsor, boys.
Yeah.
Right. So we're all in agreement that this sounds to me like it's.
JJ said he wasn't in agreement.
Nah, she's
You think she's just like cannon fodder?
This is going to be his response for everyone. Nah, probably not.
So my only visual reference are these photographs of these prostitutes and From Hell with Johnny Depp. All of the prostitutes are fucking disgustingly ugly, and I like
Mary Ann Nichols one.
Like,
Mary Kelly, yeah, but she was meant to be.
I'm talking about the film.
Yeah,
and the pictures.
Oh,
all right. I get that they were dead. I get that they're dead. Like, I'm not. I know there wasn't like a fucking modelling agency for prostitutes. Like, do you want this one who looks dead, or do you want this other one that's fat and dead? Like, no. I'm sorry. Like,
I love it. I love it.
It.
Ben looks shocked, but I love it.
So Heather Graham, obviously the one. We'll get on to her, but they said that so many killings were happening at this time in London because, of money, and a prostitute. Just imagine like an angry boyfriend or an angry client,
punter,
and he's just like. So you said there was no sign of sexual intercourse or anything?
Not recently.
No, there was no sign.
Love, it's freezing. It's pissing it down. It's fucking industry, like London. It's cold. It's wet. Can you just fucking hurry up and do it? And she's like, fuck off. Give me my money. And she runs away. And this angry squaddy. I don't know if any of you guys have been to New York on Fleet Week.
No, I
me.
haven't.
Like, I'm surprised there isn't another fucking Jack the Ripper in New York on Fleet Week because they're all
taking out squaddies.
Navy fucking it's awful.
Yeah, so Canterbury used to be like whenever I go out in Canterbury, all the squaddies down there, it was just like forcing themselves upon women.
Yeah. So you do think this is just a case of
the
a
fact
squad?
that these two people was like they went out with squad. I'm not like singling out all.
Stop maligning the armed forces,
squaddies would
please.
murder a rapist. Murder a prostitute. Sorry.
But I'm saying that I think that is probably a higher probability.
Yes, that it was just a squaddy being a squaddy. It doesn't seem like
what would you say an intellectual murder. It seems like an erratic. Drunk attack, like
friend, yeah. Like, oh Christ, can't have it getting round that.
The only conspiracy link is the fact that she had as many stab wounds as years on this planet. But
I understand. More of a case of a squaddy being like, I can't be seen having myself away with this thing.
I disagree. I think this could be an escalation.
Like, she's 39, dang that. And then his pal was like, I've only done 38, my blade snapped. And he comes in with his bayonet.
Give us your big one. I think it could be a Ripper killing.
I think
if there were any Ripper killings at all.
Yeah.
I think
Right.
this one could possibly be one. It might not be, but it quite possibly could be a beginnings of the Ripper where he's trying to find his feet, his stabbing feet.
We're moving on now to the canonical 5. Now, this has been registered, and I say registered. There isn't fucking registered for it, but someone that is identified as Jack's first victim, Mary Ann Nichols. So, August 7th, 1888, 3:40 a.m. 39-year-old Charles Cross was on his morning commute from Bethnal Green to his job in Broad Street. He took his journey took him along a street called Bucks Row. Ben's familiar with... No, is it Bucks Row? Hanbury Street you are, Ben. Sorry, we'll get to that one. As Cross approached the looming bulk of the 1876 board school that dominated and still dominates the western end of Bucks Row, he noticed a dark bundle laying in a gateway on the left-hand side of the street. He was quoted as saying it looked something like a discarded tarpaulin, and so thinking that it might prove useful in my job, I went to suspect it. But as he drew closer, he realised that it was in fact it was a prone form of a woman who was either dead or dead drunk. As Cross stood, what is dead drunk? I kept reading this.
I've been dead drunk before.
Like, I don't think I've been dead drunk.
I have. I woke up on the roof of a Volkswagen Golf in Hamburg.
How? What, attached to it? Like luggage or
on the roof of it, asleep.
Fucking like, okay.
I assume this is a lot. It was a lot like what Charles Cross discovered that morning.
Yeah,
but it was me.
Okay. I understand it now. Now that I know someone who's been dead drunk.
Look, there's some discarded top. Oh no, it's a Granger.
Oh yeah, it's just a
sleeping John Granger. He must be from the UK.
I don't know.
I was like, why is there a Jamaican police officer in fucking London?
I was trying to work out the accent myself. Other than just being a genuine
German,
Cockney,
but you were talking about
you were in Hamburg. Sorry.
Yeah, I was.
He's in Hamburg, JJ. He's in Hamburg.
I thought you were talking about the dead body or the dead drunk body in London.
No, I wasn't being Charles Cross, but Charles Cross we were like, oh, hello, Governor, what that look, a bit of tarpaulin, I like that. I like that wine. I like that wine, put it on the back of the wagon. Oh no, it's a pussy.
In my pocket. Oh, I left that.
It's a brass.
But okay,
we'll have a go.
But as he drew closer,
murdered.
As he drew closer, he realised that it was in fact a woman lying either dead or dead drunk. As Cross stood rooted to the spot and unsure of what to do next, he heard footsteps behind him. Well, bloody hell do I do with this bloody body? Yeah, I mean, see, that's how you do a good Cockney accent. Not like the podcasts that try to impersonate it. I won't name names. Oh, that was hard.
Or what's his name?
Their accents are better than my accent of a London person.
Sorry, Ben.
The bloody Billy Butcher from The Boys, the worst Cockney accent of all time.
Billy Butcher. Now,
you bloody can't, mate. I'm actually from New Zealand. Is
it worse than Johnny Depp's in From Hell, though?
Yeah,
like,
I don't think Johnny Depp's is that bad compared to his.
I was gonna say I thought Johnny Depp's was alright. Just Johnny Depp played that character about 17 times in loads of different films.
Yeah,
so,
every Tim Burton movie he's been in. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just about to say I started watching it and I was like, is this Sleepy Hollow or is this From Hell? Have I downloaded the wrong thing?
Yeah,
it's like when you used to download stuff on LimeWire. Sounds like Blink-182, but it's actually Phoenix TX.
That's it.
Yeah,
Sleepy
better
Hollow,
band, much better band.
So, turning, he saw another Carter, as George Cross was a
Robert
Carter
Paul.
himself. Robert Paul was walking towards him. The two men stepped gingerly over the road and stooped down over her. She was lying on her back, her legs straight out, and her skirt raised almost over her waist.
Oh, cover her modesty, will ya? Cover her up.
I don't want to see a corral on my way to work, girl.
Put some socks on.
Yeah, OG socks. Charles Cross reached out and touched her face, which was warm, and her hands, which were cold and limp. I believe
he didn't touch her face, though, did he?
I believe she's dead, he observed. Robert Paul, meanwhile, placed his hand on the woman's chest and thought he felt a slight movement. I think she's breathing, Governor, he said, but very little if she is. Paul suggested that they sit the woman up, but Cross immediately refused to touch her again. So deciding that they were late for work and done as much as they could possibly have ever done, they pulled her skirt back down to cover her modesty, to her knees to cover her decency, and set off for their respective places of employment, agreeing to tell the first policeman they encountered on their way to work. But what neither man had noticed in the pitch darkness and the fogginess of Bucks Row was the woman's throat had actually been slashed so savagely that her head was almost cut from her body. Officer Police Constable... Sorry, JJ, were you...
Yeah, so that's one of the things that, like, on a lot of these stories comes through. Those guys picked her up.
No, they didn't. They were going to.
I thought they said they sat her up.
No.
Right, okay.
Robert Paul was going to sit her up, but that's when Charles Cross said, I ain't touching her. Yeah. He had apparently as well was very, very, very... forward about not touching her. Whereas,
so this is a statement, though, isn't it? This is the problem with a lot of these things.
Yes,
like, we now like rely more on evidence than we do of like personal statement.
Right. That DNA and
that sounds like something who did something wrong would say. He's
right.
Like, I definitely refused to touch her.
Because back then...
I didn't have sex with her while she was dead.
Back then, not one person is going to sit there and think about a hair being found or blood, semen, anything.
Well, they would clean the scenes up almost instantly.
Yeah, which was... all right, obviously now we're sitting there thinking, why would you do such a thing? But... back then, something like that was just common. You wouldn't expect to be found for DNA evidence or a hair or anything like that. Yeah. So as JJ just said, that's very suspect. And it's widely reported. It doesn't sound like something that was just put into a newspaper. Like, it's something that he reiterated himself.
Yeah, why would you, like... Because it's like when you see cases now of things like that. You see things that people have said and you're like, why would you even say that? Like, it's just, that makes you seem more suspicious.
Yeah.
I definitely did touch her. I definitely did touch her, that.
It's like,
why did you say that? Like, most people would be like, well, of course you didn't touch her. Like, it's fucking weird.
There's a particular murder case here in the UK that's now in a documentary on Netflix over here about a family man, a dad, where his wife and two kids went missing. And you see it... Sorry, Ben, go on, the title.
The American Murder or something, American Murder
Family Murder or something.
And you talking about why you would say certain things. You notice from the body camera of the police officer when they go into the house... Yeah, his neighbour.
He's acting strange. He's acting really strange. He doesn't normally do that.
He's acting really odd anyway in his own house, and they go to the neighbours to look at the CCTV as the neighbours like, yeah, my CCTV points straight at their driveway, so if anyone was going in and out, I'd find them. And then you notice from his body and mannerisms, and even he ends up commenting on something like, or like not even saying anything when he's being shown a possibility of a murderer being there, but he's like, I can't believe this is happening. And it's like, why? Like, this particular thing he says, I can't remember what it was, but
he goes, I had to load out, I parked the car in the garage that day because
the guy was stealing my tools.
Yeah, and then the guy next door goes, looks at him like,
you see the guy like with the TV, it's
you
like,
killed your wife and kids. Like,
why the fuck would you say, why would you suddenly develop this odd story like where there's no need to do it? Just watch what's on the CCTV. Yeah. But then the guy, like Ben has just said, his neighbour, as soon as the guy walks out and the copper wants to talk to the neighbour, just looks at him and goes, he ain't right. There's something up with him. And he's like,
throws him under.
Yeah, he immediately sits there and says, if I have to be suspicious about anyone, it's him. And this is his neighbour he's been mates with for years. Yeah. And he's just immediately thrown him under the fucking bus.
Also, this is just a thing that I think guys do. Especially, I'm not going to lie, I'm probably in America. Guys probably just been like, yo, man, come and check out my new CCTV system. It looks directly on your drive. He should have just been like, all right, cool, I'm not going to murder my family and kids then. Because there's a fucking camera that points straight to my house.
Right.
Everybody in America's like, come on, check out my new gun. Come and check out my new barbecue. Come and check out my new fucking hot tub. Like,
come check out my murdered wife and kids.
I put up CCTV in my house and I'm just like,
look
I
at
don't want anyone to see me put up CCTV. Because that's the point.
Yeah,
it's meant to be secret.
So that whole thing is crazy, but like
awful.
But so we're all in agreement clearly that Charles Cross, his his need, or at least his defense in not wanting to touch the body again, is very, very, very suspect. Like,
and that's the worst part. Again,
yes,
you make your mind up straight away. Don't want to touch his body. You don't go, I touched it. It was pretty gross. Don't want to touch it again.
Yeah.
It's not like it's.
But then, actually, now he realised he's dead. He probably goes, I don't want to touch the dead body.
Well, it's
No, but
interesting.
he didn't. That's the thing. He didn't realise
Right, they didn't.
she was dead.
But what's interesting is why people believe, obviously, that some of the witnesses were possibly the killers that were caught in the act and stopped and blah, 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 is it was reported that when I'll continue to the story in a moment, but what I just reiterated at the end of that last paragraph I read, but what none of the men noticed was, due to the dense fog and the darkness of how early it was at the time in Bucks Row, for there being barely any lanterns anywhere, they allegedly didn't notice that the slash was so deep on Mary Ann's neck that it nearly decapitated her.
Yeah.
So was Charles Cross in the awareness that if we actually picked her body up, the head would fucking roll off. So then,
like a Muppet.
Right, that's more of a situation. Oh, Miss Piggy, don't move me, please.
Yeah, there you go. Just held on by a bit of sock skin.
And it's an interesting element to the situation that they're in, because then, the other guy, Robert Paul's clearly going to be like, fuck, we need to really fucking do so. We need to find someone, because it clearly weren't him in any way, shape or form. But Charles Cross is then, if they lift up the body and the head falls off, because he or Jack would know how savagely they've done something. If the head rolls off, then they're like, he would look more suspect if he wasn't putting himself in front of a police officer and being like, oh shit, look what we just found, man. Fuck, instead of being like, again, no, I ain't touching her, I need to get to work.
Again,
it's
opposite kind of idea. Back in the day, the best thing probably to do would be to kill somebody and then go and discover the body, and you look like that innocent guy, just like, I discovered the body. It couldn't have possibly been me. That's why all my fucking... That's why all my jizz is all over her face.
I thought you were going to say that's why all my victims are still victims and not been found.
Yeah.
But it's...
Because it seemed that Jack the Ripper wasn't shy of killing people in public.
No.
And I think the idea would be, like, for instance, he killed people at night, I'm guessing. So, like,
yes.
If someone saw him... I'm just referring to the film. He had that cool little bag with all the knives and shit in it. But that'd be the best thing to do, because he would be there and he could just be like, someone came over and be like, oh, what's going on here? Oh, I've just found her. I'm actually an off-duty surgeon or whatever.
Right.
And then if they just went, oh, what's in the bag? It's like, well, because like you said, they didn't have DNA, they didn't have anything like that. That guy, he was like, you know, that's again a double kind of bluff, like.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, he's kind of trying to extinguish himself from being considered that victim by putting himself in that serious kind of situation or sensitive situation. There's a lot of possibilities, but I still totally believe that, in my opinion, the Charles Cross is immensely suspicious, immensely suspect. And mine is still as well the fact that they wouldn't sit the body up. And I still believe it was because he knew that the head would have fallen off and that would have put him in a situation, or at least him with the witness that has just arrived, Robert Paul, in a position where they have to physically fucking do something.
So those two didn't know each other?
No, they didn't. They did not know each other.
When you said they just walked off to work, and then they said,
"No, sorry,
we'll just call a police guy if we see him."
I apologize if I haven't made that clear. Sorry, Robert Paul definitely.
It's probably me. I thought that they kind of just like walked into work in the
they didn't
coal
know
mines
each
or
other.
whatever.
Yeah, they didn't know each other, but they both the coal mines. They both were on. That was their journey to work. Leading down to Bucks Row was both of their journeys to work. So it's almost like Charles Cross could have possibly been Jack, maybe, but he was. It's certainly how the situation unfolded was certainly odd. So, police.
Apart from the throat, was there any traits of?
Yeah,
she'd been cut. Other things that the Ripper later did.
Right, hold on. We'll get to that. Visually, people watching can see what Ben's insinuating, but listeners will move on to that now, but
I still don't know what he's insinuating, and I can see him.
right. So
Please describe it.
Police Constable John Neal discovered Mary Nichols. So at this point, Robert Paul and Charles Cross are in agreement that they will have done everything they can for the woman, and they're going to go to work because they're running late. But the first police officer they find, they will report.
We've all been there, though, haven't we? Running late for work, stumbled upon a dead body.
Shit,
Don't want to be late for work.
Can't be late
Don't
for
want to
work.
pick its head
Tell
up
a police
and let
officer.
it roll off.
Yeah, that's... Oh, God. What are you doing with that in work? Well, I found it on the floor and it was a body. I couldn't just leave it there.
All I
was
can
late for
imagine
work.
is like in this. I keep calling it medieval London. I don't know why, but let's just call
Victorian,
it medieval London. Victorian London.
Yes.
Them them two Jack the lads, like they've been out on the drink the night before. They've had a few beers and then just the head falls off and they're just like kick it to work. Like just a little fun game before they have to spend
Just kicking it down.
40
Well, who
hours
do you support?
in the fucking mines or wherever.
I'll
it
be
is.
Crystal Palace, you be Tottenham. All right, and just kicking it down the street.
It's only a bit of brass. Brass. Just kick
So-
your head down straight.
Okay,
Probably not.
so they're in agreement that they're going to find a first police officer they find on their way to work and let them know. However, Police Constable John Neal discovers the body of Mary Nichols, and he's quoted as saying there was not a soul about, as he was told. He was telling of his moment of finding the woman in the inquest. I've been round there half an hour previously and saw not one. I was round there half an hour previously and I saw no one. I was on the right side, and when I noticed a figure lying in the street, it was dark at the time. I examined the body by the aid of my lamp, as he says, quite cool, and noticed blood oozing from a wound in the throat. She was lying on her back with her clothes disarranged. I felt her arm, which was quite warm from the joints upwards. Her eyes were wide open. Her bonnet was off and laying to the side. As Neil stooped down over the body, he noticed PC John Thane, cool name again, passing at the end of the street, and he flashed his lantern to attract his attention. He said that he shouted that there had been a woman and there was a woman and that her throat had been cut. He called to his approaching. He beckoned out to his approaching colleague and told him to get Dr.
Llewellyn.
Is it Dr. Llewellyn?
Yeah.
Dr. Llewellyn. Another fucking cool name. What's
Lawrence
with all the cool
Llewellyn's
names?
Bowen's great granddad.
It's who? Sorry.
Lawrence Llewellyn Bowen's great granddad.
Right. Gotcha.
No, it's
okay.
not.
It's not. Right. Bamboozled.
Or the guy
Right.
from Scrap Heap Challenge. who
Ah,
was just
Robert
called
Llewellyn. Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
I know he was
Crichton's.
called- yeah.
It's actually a long-distant relative of Crichton from Red Dwarf. There we go.
Fetch Dr. Llewellyn, father. Right.
So at 4 a.m, Dr. Llewellyn pronounced Mary Nichols dead. He noted that her legs were still warm, although her hands and wrists were cold, and that she could have not been dead more than half an hour. And that's interesting considering
Because
when
half an hour ago is when old Crossy boy was there.
found her.
10 minutes.
And if
Well,
her-
10 minutes. He must have found her 10 minutes after she was killed.
Right. And it was August.
frozen.
It was the
They've all
summer.
frozen.
Yeah, Ben's
I'm not
frozen on the
I'm just
camera.
sat still.
Dean's frozen.
I've frozen.
Dean's
You have
completely
both.
frozen.
Yeah, you guys have both frozen for
Oh,
me as
no,
well.
my-
And we're back. There we
Oh,
go.
right. I thought you just had another power cut.
My connection is unstable. I'm getting something telling me, but
Oh.
we
He's
back?
getting. Go on.
A bit like Jack the Ripper's mental health.
hey, right.
Another
So,
great
any-
freeze frame there for Dean.
And you're both frozen.
Well, so
Well, yeah,
Let's
we
hold
are
tight
we
for
going
a
to carry
minute.
on talking?
let's just carry on.
Let me just,
We're talking
let me
when he
just
comes
see
back
if
in.
I shouldn't be
So,
downloading anything. To be
just
perfectly honest.
to pick up.
Can you guys hear me?
Did we mention that the
Nope, I
press
can't hear
might
any of
have
them at all.
started doing all this stuff
Hold on.
to
Whoa!
encourage prostitutes from working?
That was one of the.
He's back.
He's
There
back.
we go.
He's
I'm back now.
rearranged as well.
So what I just said, Dean, was did the press? Did we talk about the press writing about all these prostitutes dying? Even though, like, so far there's only 3.
No, well, not
Oh, are
not
they
yet.
not all prostitutes?
Well, not all of them were apparently. Not all of them
Okay.
were. However, so
I'll come on to that later then.
Yes,
Mary
so-
Ann Nichols
more
was
than a
it?
handful of prostitutes dead.
I just want to.
Once there's like 5 dead, we'll
Yeah.
talk about that.
So I want to just quickly finalise what Dr. Llewellyn was saying, that he noted that she was still kind of, her wrists were cold, although her legs were warm to touch. They were later joined at the murder site by Patrick Mulshaw, a night watchman who was working at the nearby sewer works. Although he did confess that he sometimes dozed off on duty. He was empathetic that he had been awake between the hours of 3 and 4 a.m. and that he had not seen or heard anything suspicious in the local area. So that leads straight down the avenue that Charles Cross is suspicious, or at least one of the witnesses is rather suspect for what they've discovered, the body still relatively being warm, and people in the local area, such as Patrick Mulshaw, didn't hear a thing. And as well, police constable, Constable John Neal, that had also been there half an hour earlier, had not heard anything in the local vicinity.
Seen anything, yeah.
Very, very strange.
So
and also
10 minutes.
Yes, 10 minutes. And also
David Cross, no, Charles Cross.
Charles Cross
finding the
her.
body and it happening. And the last time that the police, John Thane, had gone through. So there's a 9-minute window.
There's a 9-minute window of where a frenzied attack could have occurred in this, and it was purely one slice. Now, it's very interesting as well that this was considered a silent murder because Martha Tabram, she was also considered a very, very, very silent murder. Yeah. The people that were staying in the buildings that were of the landing that she was in also didn't hear anything. And that there were also 2 people that had gone through that landing where it was dark and had also not seen a body. So there's a 9-minute window that Charles Cross, between Charles Cross
and John Thane.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's very, 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 very strange. The police, so anyway, but around 20 minutes to 5 o'clock, a passing stranger had told them, said to the watchman, that he had believed somebody is murdered on the street. Now, this is a witness that wasn't Charles Cross and wasn't Robert Paul, but who Patrick Mulshaw, the night watchman, had said he had been approached, and that then had led to him approaching the murder site, that a person around 5 o'clock in the morning had said that there was a dead body round the corner. The police have appeared to have made attempts to trace Mulshaw's mystery informant, but the inquiries proved unsuccessful. So there is a witness that has gone unnamed and untraced in history, forgotten, completely forgotten, other than this Mulshaw implementing himself into the, I guess, murder inquiry in saying that someone else had noticed that body and that he had been told at around 5 a.m. It's really, these time discrepancies are very, very strange. And I don't know whether this could just be Mulshaw maybe making something up in the sense of covering himself, that he said that he often fell asleep at work, and maybe instead of looking less suspect, he might sit there and say, oh yeah, someone did come round and actually tell me that there was a body in the area, in hopes
that's the kind of thing you got to remember these things. Like, at the time, getting a job was probably quite hard. Losing a job and then trying to get another one was probably a lot harder.
Well, it was a brisk of, it was of life and death sometimes in that era.
Exactly. Well, the fact that you had to pay a penny to sleep on a pole just shows you how important it was to make money, really.
Right, of course. So, Ben, you... sorry, JJ, go ahead.
No, it's fine.
Ben, you were insinuating her wounds as, in my notes...
Apparently, they covered her up, and that meant they didn't realise that she'd been cut from into... I think I might have got this one confused with someone else there.
I think you might be thinking of Annie Chapman in Hanbury Street.
She'd had her throat cut, but there was actually meant to be like wounds on her, around her groin.
Yeah, there was, yes. So I think you've got her confused with the second victim of the Canonical Five, Annie Chapman, I think, because I'm pretty aware, and judging by what you pointed out, Ben, that there was a 9-minute window of the body being discovered and Charles Cross being there. And in my personal opinion, Charles Cross having something possibly to do with it, the particular slice being not a frenzied attack, but a quick situation, whereas Jack could have possibly been doing something and then Robert Paul disturbing him.
Yeah.
You might actually be correct that he was looking at doing something, or he had started what he was doing and then pulled down, because they mentioned that the skirt was only up to her knees.
Yeah.
No, sorry, it was only up to her waist, but they pulled it down
to
past
cover her
knees,
modesty,
instead of it being all the way up. So a lot of people were led to believe that he had seen Robert Paul making an entrance into Bucks Row and pulled down the shawl to cover what he was doing and being like, "Oh shit, look what I found."
Yeah,
because
this
that kind of
I get so confused about all these things though, because when you see like that era of woman, they're wearing like a one-piece dress. So are they talking about like the skirt being like the bottom of the skirt being up, or are they talking about the waistband of something? Obviously,
no, they mean the whole thing.
It doesn't take much, does it? Just to like if for instance,
if the body's
person
dead,
had, like pulled the skirt up, it wouldn't take much, like, or anything, even a little bit of wind, just to blow it down. It's not.
No, but they remember they're really heavy. They were like
they were very heavy and like almost three layers sometimes.
Or even just like even if you did have it up, somebody who's like in an area that's like prevalent with prostitution, like somebody walking past and watching a man lift a guy's skirt up, it's not going to be like, it's not going to be like that. Like you said, there was 800 people per acre.
Yeah, like they believed in that period. Yeah.
And a lot of them were prostitutes. Not the lot of them. A lot of them were prostitutes.
No.
It's going to be people. You would walk past that and just bat an eyelid. It just seems like every suspect seems a bit shady. It was like, I don't want to see this. This is where this leads me to my opinion of the suspects.
Yeah.
Which is we'll go on to, but it
just
seems very.
I'm just getting there. We go. Sorry, I needed to catch up. Yeah, leading on to the next victim, because I was making sure that Ben's thoughts or research on
the next one, isn't it?
Yes. So
the next killed person.
The second victim, Annie Chapman, September 8th, 1888, at around 6 a.m. A little before 6 a.m., John Davis, an elderly resident of 29...
Not the singer of Korn.
No, not the singer of Korn. No.
Would have led him... Probably would have given him a couple of albums worth of material discovering a dead body.
Right.
Yeah.
Rather than just being molested by his uncle.
Yeah.
And he does
Probably
kind of...
got some better tattoos as well.
Yeah. So, a little before 6 a.m., Korn vocalist John Davis, an elderly resident of 29 Hanbury Street, came downstairs, walked along a narrow passageway, and opened the back door. He stood startled at the sight of the body of Annie Chapman. She's dead. No, that's Disturbed. Shut up,
That's
Dean.
Disturbed.
I nearly did.
Did you as well?
Yeah.
David Draymond in it.
So, yeah, he discovers the body of Annie Chapman. And at that time, two men were also walking down Hanbury Street, who John Davis stopped and called them to see what he had just found. They
Filthy and Head.
Yeah. They followed John through the passageway leading to the backyard of 29 Hanbury Street and saw the mutilated body of Annie Chapman lying on the ground between the steps and the wooden fence. What the hell are you guys doing, what?
Playing Fieldy's bass.
Playing Fieldy's bass guitar. Yeah, there we go. Okay. For everybody that's audio, they were impersonating the band members of Korn. Her face and hands were covered in blood, and her hands were raised and bent with palms towards her upper portion of her body, giving James Kent, one of the witnesses, the impression that she had been struggling and had fought for her throat. Moments later, Inspector Chandler was hurrying along Commercial Street. Turning along into Hanbury Street, he forced his way through spectators who were already gathering in the passage of 29. He ordered the vicinity be cleared of all sightseers and then sent for a constable back to Commercial Street Police Station, instructing him to bring as many reinforcements as possible in order that the crowds might be contained. Another officer was dispatched to fetch Dr. George Bagster Phillips, the divisional police surgeon. Excuse me. Chandler then acquired some sacking from the neighbours and used it to cover the body until the arrival of the police surgeon. Ben,
Pass us some of that sacking, will you, love? Got covered his fucking brass up.
I was going to say, she's smothered in spunk. Get rid of it. Don't want to see that this early in the morning. But that's what you were referring to about covering up, Ben.
Yeah.
George Bagster Phillips, upon arrival at around 6:30 a.m, was seen to have only given her a cursory look over, and that it was obvious to him that the woman was beyond medical help.
She's beyond medical help.
Can't do anything about that, Governor. Chapman's throat had been cut. Now, this was the first grisly, like really, really awful murder.
So, am I right in thinking that this is the one in the film where the woman gets the things put on her eyes?
That's it. Yes, you're on the correct one. Yes, so in the doorway and the fence.
Everybody's like, "Oh my god, a murder!"
Yeah, murder! Because it was so. because it was so grisly in the open and everyone had seen it before anyone else had. Well, as the time that someone had discovered it. So.
And it was pissing it down.
Yes, Chapman's throat had been cut from left to right so deeply that the bones of her vertebral column bore. Whoa, I can't even pronounce that word. The bones of her vertebral column bore striations,
which means like marks, like cut marks.
Oh, okay, striations, and that she had been disemboweled, with a selection of the flesh from her stomach being placed upon her left shoulder and another section of skin and flesh, plus her small intestines being removed and placed above her right shoulder. The morgue examination revealed that part of her uterus and bladder was also missing. Chapman's protruding tongue and swollen face led Dr. Phillips to believe that she may have been asphyxiated with the handkerchief around her neck before her throat was cut, and that her murderer had held her chin as he performed this act. As there were no blood trail leading to the yard, he was certain that she was killed where she was found.
He just sounds like a bit of a gentle lover to me. Everything that you just read sounded like. It sounded like a Mills and Boon book.
It sounded like a love novel, like a sexual novel, didn't it?
He caressed her chin as he slashed her throat, with the laceration so deep that he marked her vertebral column.
The blood cascaded down her breast.
He had a knee tremble.
As her intestine glistened in the moonlight above her right shoulder.
So
the left arm was placed across the left breast.
This guy, by the sounds of things,
right?
And we haven't got to this one yet, but there's a lot of referencing about putting things on shoulders
in a V section.
Maybe he was a pirate. Maybe he was just maybe he'd lost his parrot. Maybe this is where it.
That's when
he'd lost his parrot, and he was just like, "Oh bloody!"
That's where all the rumours.
Margaret the parrot.
The rumours that it was a ritual thing came from.
Or Polly, but yes, Ben.
All the ritual side of things. It was just. But it seems to me like he was just throwing bits left, right, and centre.
Right.
Get over there. Get over there. Get out of the way. Move those intestines out. I need to get to her uterus.
So Dr. George Baxter Phillips.
Uterus means.
Whatever uterus mutilation means. So the doctors.
Another metal band.
Yeah.
Uterus metal.
Yeah.
That's probably what he is.
So Dr. George at the inquest, Dr. George was quoted in saying the left arm was placed across the left breasts, the left breast, the legs were drawn up, the feet resting on the ground and the knees turned outwards, the face was swollen and turned on the right side, the tongue protruded between the front teeth, but not beyond the lips. The tongue was evidently much swollen, the front teeth were perfect as far as the first molar, top and bottom were very fine teeth they were. The body was terribly mutilated, the stiffness of the limbs was not marked, but was evidently commencing. He noticed that the throat was dissevered deeply, that the incisions through the skin were jagged and reached right around the neck. On the wooden paling between the yard in question and the next smears blood corresponding to where the head of the deceased lay, or were to be seen. These were about 14 inches from the ground and immediately above the part where the blood from the neck lay. So it sounded like, well, she hadn't actually been asphyxiated by the handkerchief that was round her neck, because this is a discrepancy that a lot of people write. A lot of people believe that she was strangled first, killed, and then he began the mutilation, whereas judging by his inquest and him saying that there were spurts of blood on the path and the fencing next to her body, that leads to believe that it was an immediate attack and frenzied, and that she was still alive at the moment that she was attacked, basically.
Am I right in thinking that this is considered, even though the description of everything that the police officer or the investigator has said, I remember this being one of the worst investigated scenes of any British murder. I think it was so many different people said so many different, because of all the commotion of the audience, or the public, they all had their opinions on it, and then there was something like 20 or 30 police officers present before anybody else was there. Like, and this isn't like you see that in the film From Hell, but you also, when you read about it, I'm pretty sure it's been voted because the description you just said sounds. The description you said sounds like a really good description. The guy's like, the neck was 14 inches from where the blood was, or whatever.
Right. So there was a lot of scientific look. Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
exactly.
And whereas obviously, like the first part before, they were saying that she had been asphyxiated with the fucking cloth. And again, it's just testament to word of mouth, getting around quick, news journalists making their own things up. So it's difficult to even know particularly what parts of story are true. Other than rightly so, we've got the inquest statement from the doctor himself, but it's also sorry, JJ.
Sorry, man. It's just a bit of a delay. In this one, this is the first time they believe that she was possibly murdered somewhere else and brought to this location because
they said that this is the one where it even says that she would have to have been killed there. Where she lay.
Right, okay, because I can't remember where there's. Again, I don't know whether I'm thinking of the film and getting confused with something, but
maybe so, mate. Maybe
there is
so.
one specifically where they say it is impossible that she would have been killed in that area and have been that cold by the time they'd found her because she was drenched. And it had been raining or something like that,
right?
And they do talk about a lot about that in the film. I thought it was this one, but
I believe it's the double event.
They've got the blood on the floor and stuff. I think the double event is where.
I think the double event is the one.
Okay.
So we're now on to, of course, the second victim, Annie Chapman. We've just gone through hers, but now September 27th, 1888 is where things start ramping up when you get into the side of things with like journalism and stuff like that. Is when the dear boss, quite possibly one of the most famous pieces of serial killer evidence, like I say ever discovered, but has led its way into Ben. Yeah, you're very like.
This is bullshit. This one. This is a bit like anyone that claimed this one shouldn't even be claimed because the journalist who wrote it came forward and said, "Yeah, I made it up."
And that's backed up by later on. We'll get to it at the end of this. At the end of this segment, we'll get to it, and that's also backed up by kind of scientific analysis that has put two pieces of evidence together, which confirms like this part that we're talking about with the journalism. So anyway, a letter postmarked on the 25th September 1888 was received by the Central News Agency, funnily enough, on the 27th of September and was forwarded immediately to Scotland Yard. First discrepancy. Why on earth, if you are a murderer or you have this idea of being a murderer, would you send your letter that I will read to I will get to reading in a moment. Why would you send your letter antagonizing and glorifying yourself to the journalists, whereas really the people that are on your toes are the police, and they're the ones that are kind of looking for you actively?
I mean, I guess at the climate that things were at the time in terms of, like you said, the letterpress stuff was new. If you are a glory killer, if you are like a trophy kind of
trophy
person,
hunter,
yeah, your idea of like the police, and I mean, I guess it's still the same now. The police, like, you're not bothered if you're caught by the police, are you? But if like, especially for kids now, they're just like, I want to be famous. What can I do? Well, I'm shit at doing everything else. Shall I just go kill someone?
And that's
you would always look to social media or something like that before you would look at, and I guess that is a primitive social media.
You've completely immediately turned my idea there, because that kind of reminds me of the Unabomber when he was, instead of antagonizing the police, he would message the universities and the news agencies and yes, okay, well, because again, I'm in agreement with Ben, like this letter is horseshit, but that does kind of make a lot of sense. I never looked at it from that aspect. So the letter reads, "Dear boss."
It's like Jack the Ripper, and he's got a blue tick next to his name. Well happy with it. Just like, there we go. That's probably why he stopped killing.
Got a tick. Verified. I'm all right. I'm verified now. So the letter reads, "Dear boss, I keep on hearing but now bearing in mind as well, language back in Victorian England is very obviously different from today. So while I'm reading this, there are some words that end in sentences that I feel like shouldn't end, but of course that was the language.
But then that leads it to how it was forged to make it seem like it was written by someone less educated, rather than a journalist writing it who would have been good with grammar and spelling.
Of course, yeah.
He misspelt really weird letters like knife, spelt knife correctly.
Yeah.
Like,
Something else.
Then took an E off the end. So he got the KN right, but
which
put
is
an
the
E,
worst
took the E
part.
off. Yeah, that's the hardest part. So, a lot of the people have debunked it, even though it was admittedly a forgery.
It's a cool letter, though. So the letter reads, "Dear boss, I keep on hearing police have caught me, but they won't fix me just yet. I have laughed when they look so clever and talk about being on the right track. That joke about leather apron gave me real fits. I am down on whores and I shan't quit ripping them till I do get buckled. Grand work on the last job. Grand work the last job was. I gave the lady no time to squeal," which is kind of interesting. But again, it's not something that is to be considered, oh, how would he know that? It's actually like word got around, so we can ignore him possibly knowing something about the murder.
And he was probably he probably got there when they were still sorting out, like, calling it off and stuff. So.
Yeah. So how can they teach me now? I love my work and I want to start again. You will soon hear of me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in the ginger beer bottle, with a ha at the end, as he says. The next job I shall do. Hold on. I skipped a bit.
The next job I have to do, I shall clip the lady's ears off.
Hold on. I missed the bit with the blood. Sorry. You will soon hear me with my funny little games. I saved some of the proper red stuff in a ginger beer bottle. Why do I keep missing it?
Over the last job.
To write with, but it went thick like glue and I can't use it. Red ink is fit enough, I hope. Something a journalist would have. No. The next job I do, I shall clip the lady's ear off and send it to the police officers just for jolly, wouldn't you? Keep this letter back till I do a bit more work, then give it out straight. My knife's so nice and sharp, I want to get to work right away if I get a chance. Good luck, yours truly, Jack the Ripper. Don't mind me giving the trade name. P.S. Wasn't good enough to post this before. I got all the red ink off my hands. Curse it. No luck yet. They say I'm a doctor now. Ha ha. Like, it's a really, like, obscure. It sounds
like
letter.
A really bad sext. Like, it sounds like a guy trying to get someone off, and he's just like so rubbish at it.
How to get a goth horny.
But what's interesting is he talks about clipping a lady's ear off. Now, a lot of people look at this and say, like, he must have known something. Like, it must have been him, because why then would the killer then will lead to it, like, take an ear off the next time? But, like, if you was a killer and you had read someone trying to sensationalize you by forging your letter, wouldn't you sit there and kind of play along with it and be like, fucking look at this cunt. All right, I'm going to go and do that just to amp it up all a little bit more.
It just doesn't sound very... It sounds like an erratic message. Like, I don't know this. This isn't the From Hell letter, right?
No. This is Dear Boss.
So I never heard of this. I'd never heard of this one, but like
this was the first one. It just
sounds like a guy.
But
he sounds like a fiction writer, just like
well, it sounds like a journalist trying to sensationalize, which it was. But they didn't because Elizabeth Stride was the next murder, wasn't she? 3 days. Yes. Yeah. Did he clip the ear off?
Well, I can't remember off the top of my head. I guess we'll get to it in the notes. We'll soon find out, I guess. But I'm sure there is an ear clipping. There is certainly an ear clipping in one of them. I'm certain there is.
In a minute, mate.
So
jump into conclusions.
Leading on to Ben's referring to the fact that the letters were technically debunked in the end. I'm sorry, there's a body rolling around in the washing machine.
Yeah, I wonder what that was.
I'm not a killer. I swear to God.
Someone trying to get out.
Let me out. It's not me, I swear to God.
The tumble dryer killer.
In 1931, a journalist named Fred Best is reported to have confessed that he and a colleague at the Star newspaper named Tom Bullen had written the Dear Boss letter and the Saucy Jack postcard, and the other hoax messages. But purporting to be from the Whitechapel murderer, who they together had chosen to name Jack the Ripper in order to maintain acute public interest in the case and generally maintain high sales of their publications. Yeah. Which is, like, if someone kind of admits to that, at the time, you can still sit there and say, well, why wouldn't you say that for a bit of glorification and a bit of, like, 5 minutes of fame? And then write a book about it and blah, blah, blah. So, but in 1993, a handwriting analysis or whatever, of the Dear Boss letter was compared to that of the purported diary of James Maybrick. The report at Gornben,
which was also reported to be a fraud.
Right. Exactly. The report noted that the characteristics of the Dear Boss letter follow closely upon the round hand writing style of the time and exhibit a good writing skill. It's like they're just trying to compare the same style of handwriting.
It was just done all in bubble writing, like
all squiggly
graffiti.
And yes. So, what's interesting, in 2018, a forensic linguist based at the University of Manchester named Andrea Ninny stated his conviction that both the Dear Boss letter and the Saucy Jack postcard had been written by the same individual. Commenting upon his conclusions, Dr. Ninny stated, "My conclusion is that the very strong linguistic evidence that these two pieces of correspondence were written by the same person. People in the past had already expressed this tentative conclusion on the basis of similarity of handwriting, but this had not been established with certainty."
Fuck that guy then. Let's move on.
So they were both those fake letters written by the same journalist. Right, okay, moving on.
I'm bringing them up because of the fact that we need to obviously take into account the journalists of. They're going to be hamming stuff up. The body is still rolling around. I swear to God. I'm not a murderer.
It's just the sound effects. It's just like not as good as the American people. And she slowly walked down that London street.
She had one leg and she dragged herself down the street.
I'm going to mute the mic. So Ben, do you want to? For this purpose, do you want to start the double event? You've got the notes. You've got the notes there anyway. So
September the 30th, 1888, at 8 p.m. Ooh, all the eights. All the eights have it. Elizabeth Stride was seen sheltering from heavy rain in the doorway of the Bricklayer's Arms on Settle Street, close to 8 p.m. with the witnessed by J. Best, another Best, and John Garner.
We never got his name, J. Best. It's just referred to as J. Best. He's the J-Best, isn't he?
He's J-Best at it.
We'll go along with that.
She was in the company of a man who was about 5'5" tall. He had a black moustache, sandy eyelashes. Weird thing. He had sandy eyelashes.
That's, to me, one of the most oddest, like.
Well, I guess if he had a black moustache, but his eyelashes were a bit sandy, it means that it might be a false moustache.
Oh, that's never occurred to me.
And was wearing a black morning suit together with a billycock hat. A billycock hat is a cock with a dildo on it that he used to fuck prostitutes.
Oh, man. What is a billycock hat, though?
I think it's... I don't know.
I've got to Google it.
Google it while I continue reading. They said the man looked fairly well-to-do in the way that he was dressed, and they were astonished by the way he was going on at the woman.
So a billycock hat is that's worn by, do you know that James Bond movie where he takes the hat and he throws it?
Oh, like a bowler hat.
Yeah, it's a bowler hat, basically.
Odd job.
Yeah.
Okay,
bear in mind, rest in peace, Sean Connolly.
Yeah,
Connolly?
Yeah, Sean Connolly.
Not Sean Connolly. Not Billy Connolly's brother.
If a Connolly did die, rest in peace. But yep, Sean Connery.
Yeah. He loved slapping women. He loved slapping women. Not a great role model, but a brilliant actor.
Well, he didn't kill him.
Well, we don't know, do we? He was quite old.
This person
could have been
Sean
Jack the
Connery
Ripper.
was Jack the Ripper.
So she was seen in a company with that dude that would look well-to-do.
Well-to-do.
Allegedly.
Which definitely is evidence towards the person I think is the suspect.
Oh, really?
Yes. They claimed that they also threw some light-hearted banter their way by saying, "Watch out, that's leather apron around you."
Watch out, governor.
That's leather apron. They hurried off in the rain towards Commercial Road. Whoa. Fireworks.
What was that? Oh, fireworks going off. Okay.
She was
That
sighted
certainly made
again.
you jump.
It did, yeah. I wasn't expecting it. She was sighted around 11:45 p.m. by a labourer named William Marshall. He led a near identical description of the man Elizabeth Stride was seen with, other than the fact that he claimed the man was an inch taller than that the Beston Gardner had claimed. He also said he had overheard the man saying, "You would say anything but your prayers."
Like, just, yeah. To me, that form of evidence just sounds like something that someone would say in, I don't know, like, oh, Christ, yeah, that woman, she got murdered. Oh, blimey. And, like, kind of amp things up, almost like create things.
Yeah,
in
make
their
it
head.
sound like you had more info than you actually did.
Yeah. Oh,
like,
yeah, I was well part of that. I know what was going on.
Yeah, which is just like anyone would do that. They all want to, it's like,
I want to be part of it.
How do I get more column inches with my name attached to it in the press? So
yeah.
I think that's the same thing as today. People have more input than they actually do.
Very
Once again, he
bizarre.
described the man exactly how. Oh right, then we got 12:30 a.m. PC Billy Smith was walking along Burner Street and noticed a man and a woman on the opposite side of Duffield's yard, where Elizabeth Stryver's body was later discovered. Once again, he described the man exactly how the previous witness had done. So, other than the man being 5'7", so he's getting taller. This bloke.
He's getting taller.
He's getting
he's
taller.
5'5", 5'6", and now 5'7".
He's growing.
But granted, I don't think that's too much of a discrepancy.
Unless he's got that thing that Andre the Giant had, where he just couldn't stop growing.
But
he keeps getting police issue shoes, and they keep putting a little bit more steel on his shoes.
Yeah.
He's
got magnets on his shoes, and he just says he's walking around. He's getting taller.
So when Beston Gardner could have possibly seen this guy, he could have been leant maybe against the wall,
or she could have been on the. He could have been on the curb.
That's
like
what
that.
I'm saying. Now, one thing that I've noticed when it comes to like, one thing I've noticed here, or I found out here in the US, when it comes to height discrepancies when crimes are committed. For instance, at the 7-Eleven at the top of our road here, the two double doors that I know, I was watching like a true crime thing with my wife not long ago, and there was an incident where a guy had been proven, well, he first of all had been locked up for something, and it was because his height, the evidence that people were giving him in witness statements were identical to this guy. So they arrested him, trialed him, and fucking threw him in nick for it.
America.
But one thing that occurred was that he was like 4 or 5 inches shorter than this guy that was actually the one like that committed the crime. And what happened because of it was they were referring from a CCTV for him leaving this particular 7-Eleven and going through the door. To which then technology's advanced, and on the 7-Eleven door down our street, it has this sticker between 5 and 6 inches that when you're leaning at a distance and when the camera is facing, you can look smaller or taller than you actually are on camera. And they use like an actual sort of like ruler sticker on the door to determine the genuine size of people. So this is where people sit there and go, oh, he's 2 inches taller than the first guy. Yeah. That could have just been they were at a different angle witnessing him from a different sort of standing position.
Also, I can't tell how tall people are from looking at them.
No, me neither.
Like,
one of the hardest things to do, in my opinion.
5 foot something?
It's not. You can't. It's very difficult.
He's about
it's
this much taller than me. Like, but
that's it. Most people do just gauge that on how tall you are.
Yeah. So between
that's why I tell everyone they were 4'12", officer. They were the same height as me.
Between 12:15 and 12:40, a member of the Jewish Men's Educational Club, Morris Eagle, had left to walk his lady home, and upon arriving back to the club, had to take the back entrance. The front door was locked. At that time, it was pitch black, and he claimed that if there were a body within the yard, he would never have been able to see it.
Just goes to show how dark and bleak Whitechapel was. Everywhere, I feel like,
or
it's
how
just, you can't see
oblivious
shit.
people were of the world around them because they
right.
And how many innuendos there are everywhere. Everybody's always saying there was no entry in the back door. We had to go in the main entrance. Yeah.
Stride's body was discovered.
Sorry.
Stride's body was discovered at approximately 1 a.m. on Sunday, the 30th of September, 1888, by Louis Demeschutz. Demeschutz?
Demeschutz.
the
Call him
steward
Dick.
of the International Working Men's Educational Club, or the IWMEC.
Yeah.
IMWEC.
Imwek.
Iwem.
Imwem.
In the adjacent Dutfields yard, Demuth had driven into the poorly illuminated yard with his horse and two-wheeled cart when his horse abruptly shilled to the left to avoid what appeared to be a bundle lying upon the ground. Nothing what he later described as a dark object lying on the ground. Demuth unsuccessfully attempted to lift the object with his whip handle before leaving his cart to inspect it. Upon lighting a match, Demuth saw a prone body. He immediately ran inside the club to report his discovery before running to find a policeman.
You know what? Hold on. Before you go further, I bet if we play the name Diemschitz, or however Ben is pronouncing him backwards, I bet it says I'm Jack the Ripper.
I
agree
Done.
completely.
Done.
Or
Epstein
it's a
didn't-
special move in Street Fighter.
Or Epstein didn't kill himself. Damn shits! Damn shits! Blood was still flowing from a single knife wound inflicted into Stride's neck, and although her hands were cold to the touch, other sections of her body were either slightly or quite warm. This suggests Stride was killed shortly before Dimshit's arrival in the yard.
I really don't know how to pronounce it. So.
Dimshits!
I'm going to quickly try it on the reverser and see what it says.
All right.
Oh, God.
She died from a 6-inch cut to the neck that severed most of her major arteries. So she was killed pretty quickly, and
yes,
and apparently the killer was startled and left, or this could not be a Ripper victim at all.
I've never heard anybody say that, but that's intriguing that you mentioned that. In actual fact, that could just. They call it the double event purely because obviously.
But normally these killings are about 5 in the morning.
Shits.
Like, if we look back, they're normally like 4 a.m., 6 a.m., 1 a.m. Like
they're consistent.
Yeah, they're consistent. But this one's at 1 a.m. and it's just a slice of the neck. No,
And it sounds it's just because there are two that are like murder victims that have occurred in and around the same in and around the same sort of killings as all of these other things. I don't know whether they do rightly need to be placed together. Now, I'm not too sure.
I mean, let's not mess with the narrative now. Like, we're only just stepping into the world of ripperology.
Right. I just want to have a.
We don't really. I'm
going to. Sorry, Ben. I'll let you finish. My apologies, mate.
Yeah, we don't want to, start rocking the boat of ripperology here by claiming that one of these murders didn't even happen.
No, right. Well, no,
because we're going to get hate from the ripperologists already. I think by mocking them.
I want to discover, or I'm intrigued at you mentioning that this could possibly just be a random murder of a prostitute, connected because Catherine Eddowes was found later, and as they called it, the double event. But what I wanted to know was how far away Dutfield's yard was compared to Mitre Square, which is obviously where the next victim occurred. If I'm going to look up the distance now while you're reading that next one, because
let me enlighten the listeners to the fourth victim of Jack the Ripper, the murder of Catherine Eddowes. Ooh. At more or less the exact moment the body of Elizabeth Stride was being discovered in Dutfield's yard, another prostitute named Catherine or Kate. Actually, before we move on, does anyone want to know why Elizabeth Stride was called Tall Liz?
Because go on. I know
she
this.
was 5'5".
Yeah, and that was considered tall back then.
Really tall.
It's because someone saw her
Long
really
Liz.
closely.
Long Liz.
She was a lot closer than all the other prostitutes.
Yeah.
And they were like, "By blimey, governor, she's tall, Lizzie."
You're taller than my stepladder's girl.
Yeah. Or she was stood on a curb.
So at more or less the same time that Elizabeth Stride was discovered in Dutfield's yard, another prostitute named Catherine or Kate Eddowes was being released from Bishopsgate Police Station. She took a left out of the station, and through testimony, the officer claimed it would have taken her just under 10 minutes to reach Mitre Square with ordinary walking. All of this was around 12:55 a.m. So actually, and on that night, apparently, and I think this might be from hell. I don't know if this is real, but
Go ahead.
Catherine Eddowes had used the pseudonym Mary Kelly.
That is true. Yes, it is. No, that is absolutely true. That is
and
absolutely
they think
true.
that, and then that's where they think that the killer from hell tried to complete the killings of all of them in one night. Because she'd used the wrong number. But anyway.
But it wouldn't surprise me if Catherine Eddowes, if she did in fact know Mary Kelly, or if Mary Kelly, let's be honest, that's a rather English name. That just sounds like John
Irish.
Smith, or whatever. It just sounds like a very common combination of names. Mary Kelly. It could be that, or it could be the fact that she did use Mary Kelly's names, or it was something that just like ladies of the night had that sort of thing. If you get caught, try and use someone else's name that you might know that's new to the industry.
Yeah, we've all done that when we've dodged the train. We've dodged train fares and stuff.
Oh yeah, we've all done that. Yeah. Bob Dave. Like really crap attempt at a name, but
yeah, Bob Dave. At 1:30 a.m., BC Watkins would have passed through Mitre Square every 12 to 40 minutes and claimed that, although dark, if anyone was sleeping rough within the square, he would have absolutely seen them. 5 minutes later, 3 Jewish gentlemen, Harry Harris, Joseph Hyam Levy, and Joseph Lawande, left the Imperial Club on Duke Street. As they passed its junction with the church passage, noticed a man and woman talking quietly together. Joseph Lawende is coined as being the one man to have possibly seen the face of Jack the Ripper. Although the street lighting wasn't particularly good, he caught a brief glimpse of the man's face and was able to provide police with a description. He had the appearance of a sailor and was aged about 30. He was around 5 feet 9 inches tall, of medium build. He had fair complexion and a small fair moustache. So completely different to any of the other descriptions.
Right. He looked like a sailor.
He sported a reddish neckerchief.
Also, as well.
Go on, JJ.
What I've discovered from your guys' research is the Jews don't like the sailors, and the Londoners don't like the Jews.
Any conspiracy, you go deep enough into any conspiracy, it will be the Jews.
Yeah. Somehow they're linked, in some way or another. But back then in Whitechapel, at that era,
it was the Jews and the Poles.
There was a lot of immigrants.
Like. People didn't like the Jews and they didn't like the Polish. And and Polish didn't mean people from Poland. It meant anyone from Eastern Europe.
Yeah.
So he had fair complexion, a small fair moustache. He sported a reddish neckerchief tied in a knot, wore a pepper and salt coloured loose-fitting jacket, and had on a grey peaked cloth cap. So again, nothing like the other things. But then again, people wanted it to be part of the aristocracy. Is what I've gathered from my research is it would be way more interesting if the person doing these killings was from wealth or from an upper class than it would be just being like someone from the same class killing people. It would be bigger story, bigger headlines. So this clearly is like the opposite of what the press was saying. Pastor, since the couple were doing nothing particularly suspicious, he later maintained that he would not be able to recognise or identify the man were he to see him again.
See, that's suspicious to me. Like, you've got such a detailed description that this Joseph Lewand has given, and is part of the inquest and part of the actual case. But yet, if he was given the opportunity to try and point him out in an ID parade, he wouldn't be able to.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Like, to me, that just is so inconsistent and odd. Is that just the case of somebody not wanting to be involved in the case, but feeling obligated to explain what they've seen because they don't want to think that they could be complicit in the murder?
Yeah, or they didn't see anything at all and they just want to be involved and have their name.
And yeah.
Because not Harry Harris, Joseph Hyam Levy, they never said anything, did they?
They didn't say anything, no. Joseph was the only thing Harry Harris said, I don't think I included it in my notes, was that, there you go, sorry about that, body's going around again, that he, I was going to say, that is quite loud, isn't it? He had said that he had made a comment when they were passing, the two of them, that he didn't like walking alone with these types on the streets. So it was interesting that they made that comment.
Anti-Semites.
Well, it was odd because to me, it sounds like they were people that I think maybe had something against brass and maybe sailors or something like that, because he said he or squaddies or whatever you want to look at. It sounds like they had an issue with those types. I don't like walking home alone when those types are around.
Yeah.
But yeah, it sounds like they're kind of looking down at people like that. Yeah. So I would assume that they're pretty well to do, or at least of an upper class. But yet, why would Joseph then explain something so precise, even to the point of the eyebrows?
Yeah. But not be able to recognise him.
But no, yeah, and a handkerchief on like the right side.
Yeah.
But not recognise him.
It's all so weird, isn't it? Like, but again, it's all eyewitness testimony, which is notoriously bad. Like,
yes, precisely.
Like, so at 1:44 a.m., PC Watkins enters Mitre Square, where he discovers the mutilated body of Catherine Eddowes. He rushes to find ex-policeman George Morris, who was working as a night watchman close by. After seeing the body, he raced down Mitre Street towards Aldgate, blowing his whistle after finding two officers, PC Harvey and Holland. Holland immediately left to find George William Sequeira. Death, he said.
Yeah, Sequeira, good name.
Death, he said, would have been instantaneous once the murderer had cut the windpipe and the blood vessels significantly. He was of the opinion that the murderer possessed not great anatomical skill. In the other words, he had only a basic knowledge of anatomy. And when asked by the coroner if he would have expected the murderer to be spattered with blood, replied, not necessarily. I guess from behind is like that.
Yeah. If it was, I do believe that I put the post-mortem in the notes there, but it does interest me that he doesn't necessarily think that he would be covered in blood, yet the wounds suggest someone that isn't of the knowledge to know the anatomy well.
People thought he was like a butcher or a doctor,
or a surgeon.
But he said it was nowhere near.
So one of the big things that I was reading about was the left right-handed theory of stuff.
Yes.
And like in your brain logically, people like if you were just to say somebody, if you were to slit someone's throat, which way would you do it? Yeah.
Left to right.
Left to right, yes. Yeah.
Even if you were behind them, the natural way would be, if you were right-handed, would be from left to right. Yes. Like if you were right-handed. Yeah, if you were in front of them, which they're saying it would take a lot of force or a very sharp knife to do it, you would still do it that way, like out-handedly. Because if you were to do it the other way, it would be that way, and then obviously hard with a pointed knife. But there was like some weird theory about why a lot of the cuts on the throat were jagged, but there's quite a few of the victims that was like it was a clean cut to here, and then there has forcibly been pressure put on the back of the head to rip this part open.
Right.
That's why these parts are jagged.
You know, JJ's pointing to his throat for all listeners.
Yeah, sorry. But that was the thing. Like, I don't think if you were like, because it seemed like the guy was probably a clever guy if he was a surgeon. It doesn't really matter which way you do it, because I mean, you've all seen Forged in Fire, like Doug McIder. He can just fucking he can do it everywhere, and it yeah, exactly. It will kill. But he's like, it doesn't matter which way that is, because there's loads of theory about the upper hand, like hand upwards technique.
Is that?
Like, it doesn't really matter. Like, I don't think it's So apparently, like,
coming from another direction,
so
right? Yes. Yes.
So you would do that, but then there's people who are just like, you can fraudulently do that. It seemed like the throat cutting thing was more of a signet, more of a this was me.
Calling card.
So he could have done that when the blood splatter thing. They were saying that if you were to cut any other, I'm saying they, like, scientifically, there's only like 3 or 4 places on the body that you could cut first, where the neck later to be cut wouldn't make a trajectory splat.
Yeah.
Okay.
So they say the best place to kill somebody without
evidence of blood,
a signature is the inner thigh, because it would literally be like, if you were stood up, it would project, but it wouldn't. Obviously, in most cases, you'd be wearing trousers. Most people always say the throat because it's the most exposed part. That's why women put perfume on their throats, because their pulse projects that kind of thing. So that's why they were saying, yeah. I'm a peanut whore. I've just had like a full bag of peanuts while I was muted because I hadn't eaten all day. But
well, it's interesting looking at the notes that you're mentioning like the ferocity and stuff like that, because Ben, did you want me to carry on, or do you want to
carry on now? Now the tumble dryer has stopped rotating their body.
Oh yeah, it's gone. Yeah, okay. So, but at the scene of the murder in the early hours of the morning, Sakura did little more than pronounce life extinct and decided not to touch the body, preferring instead to await the arrival of the city divisional surgeon, Dr. Frederick Gordon Brown. There was great disfigurement of the face. The throat was cut. The intestines were drawn out to a large extent and placed over the right shoulder. A piece of about 2 feet was quite detached from the body and placed between the body and the left arm, apparently by design. Almost like a calling card, like you were saying, JJ. The lobe and auricle of the right ear were cut obliquely through, which is interesting because, as we mentioned about a letter being forged, as we do believe, forged by journalists, Mr. Murderer has probably clearly read about it because it was put in the... Oh, did they put it in the papers? I can't quite remember.
Yeah, they'd already put it in the papers by now.
They'd put it in the papers. So, sorry, JJ.
Just talking about the ear thing, like historically, obviously everyone knows about the Van Gogh ear cutting thing.
Yes.
Historically, I can't remember, and this is where my research...
Quick, JJ, explain why, if some listeners don't know, we do know, but why Van Gogh... with the ear thing?
To give to his love. I can't remember exactly the reason why, but he gave it to his love. Historically as well, people cut off their wedding finger. Ooh. And that's where the wedding band comes from.
Because it's got a artery direct to the...
there's an artery directly to your heart. So the idea that is... Historically, though, people did remove the wedding finger.
Right. So just to bring us... before I forget, they hadn't released the letter yet.
Oh, they hadn't?
And she clipped an ear off, so...
All right, okay. So, I mean, if you were...
That's interesting.
If you were educated in an idea of an ancient ritual or whatever, the idea of, like, I don't know if any of them lost fingers, but the idea to cut an ear off might have significant... This is just me, like, riffing, I don't know.
No, yeah, I understand.
I only know about the ear thing because I have nothing to do with this.
So again, we mentioned, as Ben mentioned, the letter hadn't been released, but this killer, as the letter had perpetuated, one of the victims of the double event did in fact have the lobe or their ear technically removed, which is quite strange.
So it isn't a copycat of the letter, essentially, because the letter hadn't been removed.
The journalist get to the scene of the crime and cut the ear off?
Could, maybe, don't know, witnesses, but there were people around the body. I don't think that's something we could imagine, like, that happening. But again, that's something
the journalist was the killer.
Bam, bam, bam.
Like you said originally, I don't know if anyone's theories are that, though. That's why I'm just going to say that now.
No, mine isn't.
I mean, mine's just going for the... You know which one mine's going to be.
Yeah, don't mention it, though, in case... I'm pretty sure we'll need to do a two-parter. And I think that would be good if we'd have to do a two-parter, because then we could really focus on each of our suspects. But anyway, sorry, right.
Yeah.
Brown's post-mortem reported that he said this: I believe the perpetrator of the act must have had considerable knowledge of the position of the organs in the abdominal cavity and the way of removing them. The parts removed would be of no use for any professional purpose. Which again leads to JJ's significance of it being a calling card of the things that he would do with the intestines and stuff just being placed on the shoulders.
All this stuff leads it to being a process killer rather than a product killer
with
rather
an agenda.
A product killer rather than a process killer. So he's doing it for the product, like, of doing those things, like Dharma or something like that. So the actual murder isn't the thing that he wants to do. It's the
mutilation.
The mutilation afterwards. Yeah,
it's almost the go-to. It's
he just wants it. That's why the killings are so quick. Like it's the slice the throat as deep
Because
as
he
you
wants
can,
to
get
get
it done, so he can get to those.
Was that like Ted Bundy? I think was that it wasn't. He admitted that it wasn't the killing that was the. He said the killing was the difficult part. It was the part after that was.
Jeffrey
the
Dahmer
enjoyment.
as well used to have to get absolutely wasted drunk to do
Jeffrey Dahmer.
Yeah, he used to have to get wasted drunk to do any killing because he hated the killing part. It was the
was the bit after.
The bit after he wanted.
Yeah. So the part and that kind of also leads to the evidence pointing towards the fact that it wasn't multiple killers and that there wasn't a Jack the Ripper, that it was in fact a single person. So there's lots to consider.
Well, it does, but it also leads to think that maybe not all 5 of these killings were the same person,
but there was probably 3 that were.
And there was probably more and less and different. I think the timelines are all over the place.
Well, the victims list is. Like, we could go on forever. We could do a 5-hour podcast and not cover all of the victims because there are so many. Anyway, sorry, I'll carry on. So the parts removed would be of no use for any professional purpose. It required a great deal of knowledge to have removed the kidney and to know where it was placed. Such knowledge might be possessed by one in the habit of cutting up animals. I think the perpetrator of this act had sufficient time. It would take at least 5 minutes. I believe it was the act of one person. So he believes the person had knowledge of what he was doing. That's why it was so quick and precise, and why potentially the double murders were in fact connected. Because I also noted that, Ben, that you also checked that it did not take long to get from Dutfield's Yard to Mitre Square. It's anything at walking pace, 20 minutes.
Anything in Whitechapel is 10-15 minutes.
It's really. Not difficult to get to. So, at about 3 a.m. on the same day as Eddowes was murdered, a blood-stained fragment of her apron with the combination of fecal matter was found lying in a passage of the doorways leading to flats 108 and 1119 model dwellings, Galston Street, Whitechapel. Above it on the wall, well, now this is, I don't know whether this is connected, but this is a piece of evidence that stands out massively. It's featured in From Hell, and I think it's because it's such an obscure
It's a reference to the Freemasons, isn't it?
It is?
Well,
yeah, this is the way it's spelled.
So
this is arguable. There's three major references where it can be from. But
I'll read what it was. So above it on the wall was a graffiti in chalk commonly held to have read, "The Jews are the men that will not be banned for nothing."
Blamed.
The writing may or may not have been related to the murder, but either way, it was washed away before dawn on the orders of Metropolitan Police Commissioner Sir Charles Warren, who feared that it would spark anti-Jewish riots. As we mentioned, racism against immigrants was huge and rife in Whitechapel. But yes, JJ, I'm interested that you say there are 3 things about this graffiti that's so poorly written, might we add. Like, poorly worded. Excuse me, sorry.
Again, my research isn't amazing.
No, that's fine. Go on.
So the Freemason reference that Ben was talking about is that they use the word, the way that it was spelt. So you'll have to remind me how it was spelt in that.
Juwes.
WES. So in the Masonic like scriptures or whatever, they refer to that, and then like 2 other words that are like closely spelt the same. Can't remember exactly what they are. So that was
Jubella, and Jubellum or something.
Oh,
like that.
yes, I have heard of this.
From what I know about this is where in my mind the second link is. Those are either Sumerian or Egyptian links, and I can't remember which one. And then the third one is obviously the Jewish link. But the one of the big things that was like huge in this, and at the time these kind of ironies weren't on, I don't even know it's classed as an irony. They weren't.
It's a double negative, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a double negative. So they won't. They said they are the people who would not be blamed for nothing, which means they have something to be blamed for.
Yeah,
but that links to a Masonic and a Thelmetic and a Hermetic or Hermeticism.
Hell.
That's where that links in. So double negatives are a way that they would. My friend Jamie would know.
Is this
so
a
much
way
about
of
this.
people in that area and field of secrecy they communicate.
It's a nod. So it's basically like saying,
I get you.
Because most people at that time in Whitechapel weren't educated, so they would use these like, because most were like, they won't be blamed for nothing, and then they just forget about it. Whereas in like now, especially now, like, you know, grammar is like a big thing. Like, people used to go at each other on the internet about it. Like, grammar was a big thing. Like, grammar Nazis.
Yeah,
they were like, that is massive.
Yeah.
So them doing that was kind of like a signal of like, oh yeah, we're involved, but we're not involved, kind of thing. And now it seems obvious, but I don't think back then it was. Like, now 130 years ago. And also the guy who was the police dude, the guy who was enforcing it to be washed off, most of the people who were in those high level jobs had Masonic links at the time. So like,
they had an incentive. Yeah.
And I mean, this was, I'm wrong, but I think this was at the very, very beginning of the Scotland Yard thing. I believe Scotland Yard was quite a bit later, but I think it was the idea of that, like, sort of internal government thing. I'm pretty sure Scotland Yard is probably like early 1900s, but or even maybe even later. But it was the idea that we're all together like a boys' club, like, oh yeah, we do this. And there is theories, obviously, that guy was involved in it. Like, why would he be so obsessed with washing it down?
Removing, significant evidence.
He's either ancient Sumerian, Jewish, or in the Freemasons.
Or he's well involved.
Yeah, or he did it, or he's Jack.
I really need to pee as well. I'm very sorry, guys.
Right. And we're back from the urination.
Hey, urination station.
There's another theory with the Jews thing, is that it was the killer telling the police that the 3 Jewish men that witnessed the first killing weren't to be blamed for it, and they had nothing to do with it. That was another one that it could have been.
That's a loose... That's... yeah. I never looked at that, to be perfectly honest. And that kind of connects with what we were...
Not exciting though, is it?
Well, I think it is, because it still leads... I'm still curious as to why... Let's go back and look at his notes. Joseph Lewand, coined as seeing the first person that saw the face of Jack the Ripper, why he would give this description, but then, like, say, I wouldn't be able to notice him in a like, line of people.
Yeah.
Like, and then that being linked to that, they're not going to be blamed for it. That sounds significant, or just an odd coincidence.
I've just been reading, like, going back onto the ritual thing, because when you guys were talking about the double incident, I was thinking about the Masonic link, i.e., that if it was a ritual thing, it's more than likely not just going to be the one guy,
right?
So it would be like, I don't know, the new interns at the Masonic Lodge or whatever. But just as you went to the toilet, I was just reading about the Anti-Zion League, and they believe that it was a Jewish ritual murder.
It always goes back to blaming the Jews, doesn't it?
I was going to say, Jesus Christ.
We definitely need to do a podcast on Zionism, like, but it's such a difficult thing to touch on, and the Holocaust and everything like that. The people against this believe that was made to take the blame from it, which is, it's a really, really strange thing. But this sounds like another one of those things. Like, if you were to take it from that standpoint, it does sound like another one of those entry-level things where they were like...
Ritualistic, yeah.
Well, you should really look into the Anti-Zionist League.
Well, is this something that could be connected to some suspects that you have an idea of? Because I obviously know who your suspect is, but I don't. For the next episode, I don't want to spoil it. But
yeah,
I think that could have some.
I don't know. I don't know who your both suspects are. So I'm.
No, that's good though. I only know yours because I know.
I don't know who JJ's is.
He's got a dick piercing. He's named Dick Piercing.
There you go.
Hollywood.
Johnny Frenulum.
the Hollywood suspect for JJ then. Oh, it had to go.
So-
I had to ruin it and be all Hollywood.
So no, it doesn't matter, does it? But anyway,
Whatever
next
murder
in the
is.
timeline, we have the Saucy Jack postcard. It was received on the 1st of October, 1888. The postcard mentions that the two victims killed on the 30th of September were killed very close to one another, stating double event this time. Elizabeth Stride and Catherine Eddowes were both killed in the early morning of 30th September as part of Eddowes' ear was found detached at the crime scene as a result of facial mutilations that the killer performed. Some authors have argued that the letter was sent before the murders were publicised, making it unlikely that a hoaxer would have such knowledge of this crime.
So it was sent after and postmarked before.
But the letter was postmarked more than 24 hours after the killings took place. So long after many details were known by the journalists and residents of the area. And this is how we were talking about at the beginning when it came to word of mouth, journalism, all trying to outdo each other. Although some books might sit there and say, well, this was posted well before and they wouldn't have known anything.
You just write on it. 25th
You write
sent
on
the 25th of September and it was received on the 28th of September. The post, but it said it tracked, did they? They didn't send it special before 1 p.m.
No.
They just sent it and then it gets there when it gets there.
Right.
It wasn't recorded before 1 p.m. on the date the next day.
Right.
So it's easy to hoax it.
There's flaws. Yeah, there's flaws.
Yeah.
It's easy to hoax it. So the text of the postcard read, I was not codding, dear. I was not codding. So misspelling kidding, essentially. Or is codding what they used to say back then?
Probably an old English.
Codding is an old
codfish.
old English
Right,
term.
okay.
Yeah.
Codpiece face. I was not codding, dear old boss.
When I gave you the tip.
Yeah, you'll hear about Saucy Jack's work. Woo! Tomorrow's double event. This time, number one squealed a bit, couldn't finish straight off. Had not time to get ears off for police. Thanks for keeping last letter back. Thanks for keeping last letter back till I got to work again, Jack the Ripper.
We know that they've admitted to writing those letters now, but it becomes even more obvious actually when you read them a few times.
Yeah,
when you read them back a few times, you realise that it is actually like bullshit.
Bullshit.
Yeah, it's like, I didn't manage to clip her ear off, but I got to the second one, I clipped her ear off. Right off it was, I did it.
And it's
like Russell Brand's
again,
written these.
Oh, yeah, it's so many brandisms going on in there. Police officials later claimed to have identified a specific journalist, as we mentioned. The author of the message and the earlier Dear Boss letter in 1931 was journalist Fred Best of The Star with his friend. They had claimed to have written both the letters signed Jack the Ripper in order to keep the businesses alive.
This is just a clutch, but obviously when I was picking out the things that I wanted to look into, did you read the theory about how the Dear Boss letter was a suicide note?
No, divulge, dude. Like that what?
So there was a lot of things in there that were basically referring to like singlism and stuff. I'm just asking if you guys read about it.
I didn't.
I brushed over it because I just saw that it was. Believe it was that.
I saw that it was a hoax, and then I was like, okay, well, I don't need to.
I'd never heard of it until we're talking about it now again, and I'm just like, hang on a second, I did read about that because I'd never heard the word Dear Boss anywhere, but there was a theory that it was a suicide note, and this is why there then became the theories about copycats.
Considering, sorry, JJ, I'll let you finish. Apologies.
No, it's fine. That was it.
Considering this is the biggest unsolved crime when it comes to serial killers in the world, the most infamous serial killer because evidence of one of the murder scenes being one of the most poorly recorded, like crime scenes or something like that, and when we get to the last victim that we're about to, Mary Kelly, her crime scene was the first ever crime scene photo captured. Considering how messed up this, and how infamous this case is, it's just testament again, like JJ saying, did you find out how apparently the Dear Boss letter is somehow a suicide note? It just goes to show how bullshit this whole thing could almost be.
There's so many
across
theories based around everything with this, though.
Yeah.
Like that
It's
is
insane.
Like, originally, it was how many is it? Like the 5 or the 13? Like
or something like that. 11,
it's a significant
13.
amount difference. It's not like the 5 or the 7.
It's like
It does. It depends on what ripperologist you are, and how rich your
shit one or
parents
a
were,
really
so you
shit
could
one.
just deep dive into it and become like the best ripperologist.
Yeah.
So just quickly going back onto the notoriety thing, like, and because as humans we like to believe that we're evolving. We like to believe that we wouldn't do something that somebody did 140 or 130 years ago. Like, as this news spreads through London about this guy who's everyone's talking about him, oh, Jack the Ripper, don't do this, don't do that. I essentially as well, very similar to what's happening at the moment with the lockdown. They were trying to do curfews. They were saying don't go out after this time, don't do this, don't do that. We spoke earlier on about how it might have been a subliminal feed to stop prostitution. Oh, he's killed loads of prostitutes, don't prostitute anymore. But the kind of on the outside perspective, we were talking about those t-shirt companies earlier on, and about how probably 5-6 years ago one started, and then someone went, oh well, I can do something like that but with things that I like, and then it just spirals and spirals and spirals. And because the same as everything with social media now, you just, oh, that guy, he literally posts pictures of him stood outside a pub or everywhere, or there's loads of them on the internet. They just do food reviews and fucking bullshit like that, and then everyone wants to do those. That could well be a Jack the Ripper kind of vibe, because I think you said, Dean, in the first place, he was the first original noted killer.
Serial killer.
Well, yeah, and then
most infamous.
There was probably loads of them, but
there's H.H. Holmes as well, isn't there?
Say that again.
There's H.H. Holmes. He's
which was around the same time, I believe.
It was,
yes,
but
he's a suspect.
There's rumours that he could be a suspect, but the timeline definitely doesn't line up.
Yeah,
but he was a proper brutal. He did I think H.H. Holmes was high, very high.
That wouldn't have transatlantic, essentially. It wouldn't have got over to it. Yeah, exactly.
Well, he started. Well, H.H. Holmes was from America. He was an American serial killer.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's the idea and the concept of, for instance, now, serial killer culture. There's a really good documentary about it on Amazon about people who obsess over serial killers, but they're not serial killers. You know what I mean? They're just weird.
Yeah.
They're there's, I think the picture's John Wayne Gacy, but the idea that you can become famous by doing something so
awful,
essentially human, if you look at it 800, 900 years prior to this happening, going and killing a human, it's not a big thing. You wouldn't have had the police service. You wouldn't have had people just saying, oh, you can't do that. You're not allowed to do that. You just did it. So that sort of natural human instinct to be able to do that and become
notorious
essentially
for
in the slums, to become something out of nothing. Donnie Darko is what is it? The destruction is the best form of creation, or something like that. Yeah. That's essentially.
I understand what you're getting to, right? Yeah.
So I mean, the concept that it could have literally just been loads of people copycat
killers.
Each other.
Yeah.
It's Scream 3, Scream 2 and 3, all over.
Absolutely, without shadow of a doubt, could totally be a copycat killer and just be hammed up by the press and just be a complete whirlwind of awfulness, but at the same time something that a lot of people clearly profited on, massively
and
profited
still are
on.
to this day.
Yes.
If you want us to profit from this, sign up to the Patreon now, or use ogsocks.co.uk code NAC.
And we're talking. What was that?
That was
sounded
my
like
ghost
when
sound.
Louis Theroux speaks to that guy, and he's like, "Mission control to Nebula on." Rendlesham Forest or whatever.
Oh, I know, yeah.
You're a fucking idiot. But this is the thing, with conspiracy theorists, it's been, 130 years. Do you reckon, people have been thinking about all these weird ones because people have been given too much time to think about it.
Yeah,
and it just gets more and more mysterious. Like, it wouldn't surprise me that in like another 100 years' time, they're like, Jack the Ripper knew about the internet, so he was trying to kill everybody before the internet became a thing. Like, like it sounds stupid, but that's kind of this is where like that whole Jewish thing. I'm not sure how prevalent that was at the time, because it sounds like an agenda thing rather than an actual factual thing.
Right,
especially when you said there was 300 newspapers.
353
local
definitely
comes
Five
into
of them
it.
Don't like Jews.
Yeah.
They just write something.
Especially when we come to the suspects, which I definitely think it's going to have to be a separate episode now.
It for sure will be, unfortunately. But
when we
I
come
like
to the suspects, you can definitely tell that there was definitely some opinions, and there was some prejudices that led to certain people being brought forward as potential Ripper suspects. The only reason they were brought forward is because they were either Polish or Jewish.
Yep.
And then
I would totally agree with that.
So they had no other links to the crimes other than being in Whitechapel and being Eastern European or Jewish.
And being a bit angry because they were a person that was racially discriminated against probably on a daily basis.
And do you find that
in an area of 800 people per acre?
Yeah. Well, that's the thing. Like not going into like modern stuff, but obviously when anything happens in England now, it always seems to be blamed like locally on people who aren't from this country. Like that's what like the locals want to believe. Like especially where I'm from. I'm not sure about you guys, but like Yorkshire, ageistly, the older generation always be like, "Oh yeah, it'll be them. It'll be them."
Yeah. Brexit was mainly racially driven on people going, close the borders, get rid of it. It's like the immigrants work harder than you do.
Yeah. And that's why they don't like them, because they're like, they get paid
for doing our jobs,
what you don't do, and then you just moan about it.
Yeah. So like even to this day, it's the same prejudices. It's the same thing.
It totally is.
Nothing has changed. It's just we've got the internet now.
Do you reckon all those prostitutes and all those people are just looking, all the Polish people just leaning on that rope, that two pence rope, just like, oh God, I wish I was in his shoes.
Yeah, and then all the Polish people working their asses off.
Yeah, I wish I had shoes. Okay, so now we're on to the last victim of Jack the Ripper. Now, on my notes, excuse me, Mary Kelly particularly, there was a lot known about her. The notes are quite dense. Yeah. There's a lot of stuff to back up with Mary Kelly, but what I'm going to do particularly, we'll save some of the density of this part of the story when it comes to people she knew. Yeah, we can leave for the suspect side of things, because I want to get to the actual discovery of the body immediately, because it's quite possibly the most significant. As you mentioned, listeners,
the only one that was done indoors.
It was the only one that was done indoors. It was the first ever crime scene photo ever taken, and quite possibly one of the most gruesome.
She was a bit sexy as well, apparently.
Apparently, she was a bit tidy.
She's a bit of a sexy bitch. Whatever sexy bitch means.
So, at 25 years old, Mary Kelly... Oh, no, hold on. Uno memento. I need to read the date. No, I've lost the date. Never mind. There we go. Murdered. 9th of November. Anyway, so 9th of November, 1888.
Very close to today.
Very, yeah. Oddly enough.
It might be. It might be when we're recording the next episode, to be honest.
It might. We'll try and go for that then. We'll try. Yeah. But anyway, at 25 years old, Mary Kelly was much younger than the victims of Jack the Ripper. The Daily Telegraph, excuse me, my notes have just gone and had a Connery. There we go. Rest in peace, Sean Connery. Sorry about that. The Daily Telegraph described her as being a fair complexion with light hair, possessing rather attractive features. Remembering her in rather attractive features, whatever features are. Remembering her in his memoirs 50 years later, Walter Dew, great name by the way. He is the detective chief constable at the Metropolitan Police. Walter Dew claimed that he knew her quite well by sight and told of how he had often seen her parading along Commercial Street between Flower and Dean Street and Aldgate or along Whitechapel. She was popular with locals. She was someone that a lot of people said that really they wouldn't have thought would have been caught up in a situation like this because of, granted, she used to be a prostitute, but I think we'll end up...
Yeah, she was a prostitute from a really young age when she lived in Ireland. Like she,
Yes.
And no, not in Ireland. She moved to Cardiff and Newport. She was a prostitute in Newport at a really young age, like 14, 15.
I mean, she was 25 as well. Like the rest of them were like pushing 40.
Just, right, yeah.
You know, they're going to be like, oh, poor girl.
It was rather odd. But anyway, around 4 a.m. of the morning of 9th of November, two neighbours claimed that they had heard a faint cry of, oh, murder.
Oh, murder!
Murder! But cries of murder were quite regular occurrence in the neighbourhood and often meant a drunken brawl was taking place or domestic violence was occurring. It was quite customary for those on the receiving end of such violence to scream murder. Which...
The boy who cried wolf rings
there
mind.
You go.
We've missed something.
What have we
We've
missed?
jumped ahead and we've missed out the From Hell letter.
Go ahead then. I've missed that. Jeez, that was a good one.
Before we go any further, we need to talk about the From Hell letter because this, for me, is probably the only letter that could have come from Jack the Ripper. Really?
Do you have the link notes there with you?
I am going to read it to you in 2 seconds.
Cool.
I got lost.
I'm glad you brought this up because, Steph, I apologise for missing something, but I'm glad Ben was there with that as well.
The From Hell letter was sent to George Lusk, who was the head of the Watchmen, the task force that the local people of Whitechapel put together to kind of combat the gangs.
Oh, like the vigilante group.
A vigilante. A vigilante.
Gotcha. Oh, okay.
So he was, and Jack, if he was from those parts, he'd know who Mr. Lusk was, who George Lusk was. So he wrote him a letter on, I think, October. When was it received? Mid-October.
Okay, yeah.
15th of October, maybe. Let's say 15th. No, the 16th of October.
Let's just say
it was the 16th of October. A small package wrapped in brown paper bearing an indistinct London postmark was delivered to Lusk in the Evening Post. It was addressed to him by name and bore the name of the street, but did not give his house number. From Hell. Mr. Lusk. Saw. I send you half the kidney I took from one woman, preserved it for you.
Preserved it for you, yeah.
T'other piece I fried and ate with the very nice. I may send you the bloody knife that took it out if you will wait a little longer. Signed, catch me when you can, Mr. Lusk.
Now,
so it wasn't signed Jack. It was
incredibly, if anything, that's the most illiterate thing that I've ever read when it comes to...
Send you half kidney with no white. I took from one woman, preserved it for you. T'other piece I fried and ate. It was very nice with an S. I may send you the bloody niff that took it out if only wait a while longer. Signed. Catch me if you can.
Has anyone tried to cipher that? Like, i.e. the misspelt letters spelling out something?
Know.
I don't know, but I'm sure.
I'm pretty sure, it's been 130 years. Someone must have tried to do it.
Yeah.
Because that sounds like a cipher to me. It sounds like the,
there's a hidden meaning in there.
Yeah. The knife. The
you can work on that cipher for the Suspects episode.
I'm drunk already. I can't forget it. For the next episode, maybe.
Yeah. Maybe you can.
I won't get a suspect. I'll just go with the letter.
So what is it about this that
letter was sent with half a kidney, a human kidney?
Yeah, and that was human. Yeah,
a human kidney, and the murder before, a kidney had been removed.
Right,
Catherine Eddowes had a kidney removed, so that for me is pretty.
That alone is solid.
That's pretty crazy. Like a human kidney. I mean, it's probably not that hard to get a human kidney in Whitechapel. But
in that era of London either. Like, get a homeless person, fucking booze him up.
Get half a kidney, get a kidney, and send it to someone.
Yeah.
What's the actual proof that it was human, though? That's
They took it to
DNA wasn't massive then.
No, they took it first. They took it to a vet, didn't they? And the vet was like, "This isn't an animal. Like this is."
But it was only
human.
half a human kidney, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, it'd been cut up.
Because he ate the other half.
He ate the other half, apparently. So tastes proper nice. It did. Ooh, kidney. He took it to Dr. Thomas Openshaw, the pathological curator, examined it. Openshaw's finding would become the subject of much press debate, not to mention misreporting in the days that followed. And Openshaw would become so alarmed by the inaccuracies that would appear in various newspapers that he would go on record and correct them. Ultimately, the subsequent press coverage would encourage another Jack the Ripper letter written to target Openshaw with his own prank letter. So, yeah.
Another bloody letter. But you believe this is the concrete one, like that's one.
No, I'm not saying it's concrete. I'm saying this one could be from
because of the kidney
Jack
itself.
Catch Me If You Can. He signed it. He didn't sign it. Jack the Ripper.
That'll Catch Me If You Can, fella.
Leonardo
Very
DiCaprio.
much sounds like the Yorkshire Ripper one, though. He's like, "You're no closer to finding me." But then he found him.
You found me at the end. P.S. You got me. He's knocking at the door.
Pubed.
It's me, Pubed again. Peter.
Campest Yorkshire man ever.
I'm glad you brought the From Hell letter up, though. I'm devastated that I've actually missed that.
And then the next thing that happened was Mary Kelly was mutilated in her bed.
The From Hell thing is the most kind of epic part about it
sick.
Because it is basically signifying that somebody is taking claim of it. But again, it just sounds like a copycat thing to me.
Yeah. So, okay, I'm trying to make sure where I am with my notes. There we go. Right. Thomas Bowyer finds her body at 10:45 a.m. that morning. Mary Kelly's landlord, John McCarthy, sent his assistant, Tom Bowyer, who was also known as Indian Harry, ran to 13 Miller's Court to collect her overdue rent. Striding into Miller's Court, Bowyer banged on the door twice. There was no answer, no doubt believing that she was inside but unwilling or unable to pay her rent. Bowyer stepped around the corner and pulled aside a curtain that covered the broken window pane. Moments later, an ashen-faced Bowyer staggered back into McCarthy's shop. "Governor," he spluttered. "I knocked at the door and could not make anyone answer. I looked through the window and saw a lot of blood." You don't mean that, Harry, was McCarthy's horrified response, and the two men hurried from the shop into Miller's Court. Stooping down, McCarthy pushed aside the curtain and gazed into the gloomy room. A sight of unimaginable horrors met his eyes. The wall behind the bed was splattered with blood. On the bedside table was a pile of bloody human flesh, and there on the bed, barely recognisable as human, lay the virtually skinned-down cadaver of Mary Kelly. Now, for people that are...
Trigger warning, that's quite gruesome.
Yeah,
we should have warned you before that.
Yeah. If you're curious, listeners that aren't aware of this, excuse me, this incident was the first crime scene photo ever recorded. And it is possibly one of the most... Well, there are probably more gruesome photos as time has gone on. But this particular...
there is now. I saw a guy fucking get his dick and balls eaten off by a fucking pit bull. And I saw it in motion vision.
Oh, God.
I seen it in the moving pictures. I didn't even see it in a washed out black and white photograph.
But if you want to Google up this image, you can find the original picture of what is left of Mary Kelly. Have you not seen it, JJ?
I haven't seen it.
Google the original one.
This is where I vomit live.
You can Google the original image, but at the same time, there have also been people that have colorized the photo, and it makes it even worse. Even worse. It's horrific.
I love the fact, people take the time
people are that morbid
to do this.
Yeah.
I'm just going to colorize this. Fucking hell.
What's that? That's her back that I can see through the front of
kidneys.
Oh, there we go. Better. That needs to be a bit darker. Kelly. Right, okay, so while you guys are doing that, I'll have and even the listeners that are doing so, Mary Kelly, crime scene photo. The police arrived. McCarthy sent... Oh, no, sorry. hold on, I nearly missed something there. The site
Did they put this picture in that book that we all bought? It looks like a human combustion.
It does, doesn't it? But it's not.
Yeah.
It might
just
well
a
be
pair
in
of
that.
old women's legs and near a toilet.
Yeah. So the site we saw, this is a I'm reading this now from jack-the-ripper.org as my notes towards the end were a little bit messed up. The site that we saw, I cannot drive away from my mind. McCarthy later told a journalist, it looked more like the work of a devil than of a man. There you go, JJ's just seen it. I had heard a great deal about the Whitechapel murders, but I declare to God, I had never expected to see such a sight like this. The whole scene is more than I can describe. I hope I may never see such a sight again.
It doesn't look real.
That's how bad it is. Like, she was
the right leg, like, unless he's like removed all the muscle from her legs.
Well, he has, but I'll after I've read through these notes, I will get to. No, you're good. I like the fact that you're clearly shocked by it. So the police arrived. McCarthy sent Bowyer to Commercial Street Police Station to fetch the police, and having first stopped to secure his shop, hurried after them. Inspectors Walter Dew, I'm still like, they blatantly named him like Walter because their surname's Dew, clearly. Oh, right. and Walter Beck were chatting inside the station when Bowyer arrived. As Dew recalled in his memoirs, the poor fellow was so frightened that for a time he was unable to utter a single intelligible word. At last he managed to stammer out something about another one. Jack the Ripper, awful. Jack McCarthy sent me. Even that as like sentence, like after seeing something like that, is another one. Jack the Ripper, awful. Jack McCarthy sent me. Like, that just goes to show how bad it was.
Just a quick one. Like, it was the thing that I was going to ask you both earlier on. Is there any particular reason where the name Jack the Ripper came from?
They just put it. It was just the press.
Is the son, like, this is where my namesake comes from. Jack's son is just a random lad. Like, it just means random lad. So Jack.
Well, Jack the Ripper was just a name invented by those two journalists.
Yeah, but that's the thing. Like, Jack the Ripper.
Where did they get that idea from? Right, I understand whether there's meaning to.
Did go around and ask everyone who was named Jack if he killed anyone? Just saying.
The point.
Yeah, I know. Like, there's
Are you Jack? Are you Jack?
Yeah, are you Jack?
Are you Jack? Are you
so
Jack?
many
Go by
Jacks.
the name of Ripper. Does your breath smell like liver? just pointing out. Anyway, I'm going to go back to watch these pictures again.
These pictures. So, soon Beck and Dew were following Bowyer along Commercial Street in the direction of Dorset Street. When they arrived at Miller's Court, Dew tried the door, but it would not open. Inspector Beck, therefore, moved to the window and gazed into the room. Almost instantly, he staggered back. For God's sake, Dew, he cried, don't look. Dew ignored this is just testament. If you're listening to this or watching this, Google the image. It is awful. It is horrendous. And if you can, colorized, and if you have a stomach, look at it. It is not
I want
nice.
to see the colorized one.
The colorized one just makes it even more horrific. Dew ignored the order and looking through the window saw a sight which would stay with him to this dying day. The horror of what he saw was still vivid in his mind when he penned his memoirs 50 years later. What Dew saw now? As my thoughts go back to Miller's Court and what happened there, the old nausea, indignation and horror overwhelm me still. My mental picture of it remains as shockingly clear as though it were but yesterday. No savage could have been more barbaric, no wild animal could have done anything so horrifying. Mary Kelly's body lay on the bed, her head turned towards the window. Her face had been mutilated beyond recognition, and one feature in particular struck Inspector Dew. The poor woman's eyes, they were wide opened and seemed to be staring straight at me with a look of terror. Indeed, so thorough were the mutilations to Mary Kelly's face that her lover, Joseph Barnett, was later only able to identify her by her eyes and ears. So, the post-mortem... Go on, JJ. It's not good, is it? It's really brought it down.
I think the problem is with everything like this, it's always the way that people are wording things to, like, what's the word? Like, infuse, like, people's scare problems about it.
Right,
so
yeah.
Her face is removed. So her fucking eyelids are gone. Like, her eyes weren't open. Like, I know it only comes down to, like, language, but it's like, oh my God, and the only thing that could do this, her face is completely removed.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
the guy hasn't.
It's-
They're like sensationalizing the fact that like her eyelids were like prized open. They're not. She's got no fucking. She's got no face. Her face is gone.
What is
She looks like the film we were talking about earlier on. A bear.
It's awful. And
what's
you
it
look
called?
at like
They live.
They live.
there's
Rowdy
there's
Roddy Piper.
yeah, like the mutilation of their faces almost. But
If you look at the
Her
photograph,
face is
right.
off.
I'm gonna take his face off.
What's interesting as well, you look at the obviously there are a lot of people that have 3D imaged the scene, and through the years people are able to make assumptions and reconstructions of certain things. If you really want to go deep and try and get an actual image of what Mary Kelly looked like, there are actual efforts that have gone to reconstruct or reimagine the face behind like the mutilation. And from the reconstruction, she was a pretty girl, like, and it's quite incredible that over the years. Yeah, it's that
people are like, she was a pretty girl,
and it's.
You know what I mean?
God, and it's
no, I'm not. I'm just saying.
It's interesting as well that out of all of the victims, canonically, it seems that Mary Kelly was the least attached or the least one that you would think would probably be involved. Granted, she was told to have been attractive, young, very well liked in the area, yet she suffered the absolute worst.
Maybe that's why.
Exactly. So, go on, JJ. Thanks on the tip of your tongue. I can see.
I was just thinking, like, do you think that might have been why the Ripper's last victim was indoors? It was the most beautiful girl, and she was on a bed, which historically, if you're in a bed, it means you're in a marital bed rather than on the streets or being
certainly back then, yeah,
a rat, like a hood rat. Like, do you think that could be why that was the last victim?
Like some sort of like symbolism as to what you're referring to. I reckon it could be
because
definitely.
There's also theories that, like, again coming back to the Masonic thing, that there was the 5 victims, and then you would sacrifice without going like hugely into it, but you would sacrifice one to the sun, one to the moon, and then one to the water, and one to the thing, and then one to the earth, which would be your basic vigil to the world.
Yeah. That's interesting. And again, it lays testament, or it connects, to all of the innards and stuff that always seem to be over shoulders that like simulate.
Well, that's where all those theories come from of Satanism, I guess. Would be the structure of the body.
Yes.
So it's along with the Da Vinci, like, divine man and whatnot.
The divine man and woman. So leading on from what you're saying about the particulars of the ritualism of maybe the sacrifices or whatever.
The salt slingers.
The post-mortem report, Dr. Thomas Bond detailed her injuries in his subsequent post-mortem report. Even today, inured as we are by graphic depictions of violence and bloodshed on television and in films, the detached scientific tone of his report makes for extremely discomforting and disturbing reading. So if you're not a fan of that, probably tune out. But if you've got this far, you're clearly inquisitive and a sick fuck like all of us.
I think people are so desensitized to that. Like,
they are.
I thought it was going to be horrendous, and I looked at it, I was like, that's horrendous because it's a human body. But in my mind, all I could think about was somebody making that out of mashed potato or something like that. No, like,
carving it on a pumpkin.
It literally looks like somebody just made it out of mashed potato and then put a dress on it.
Yeah. So.
And she was apparently the most attractive one.
Yeah. Which even makes it worse. Like, so. The body was lying in the middle of the bed, the shoulders flat, but the axis of the body inclined to the left side of the bed. The head was turned on the left cheek. The left arm was close to the body, with the forearm flexed at a right angle and lying across the abdomen. It was fixed at a right. The forearm was fixed at a right angle and lying across the abdomen. The right arm was slightly abducted from the body and rested on the mattress, the elbow bent, and the forearm supine with fingers clenched. For everybody that's listening, JJ's simulating where the arms are and stuff like that. Very well done, sir.
I'm on 35 mil, so you can only see a little bit of me.
The legs
I'm touching my abdomen.
The legs were wide apart. Go on, son. Get it. The legs were wide apart. The left thigh at right angles to the trunk, and the right forming an obtuse angle with the pubes. The whole of the surface of the abdomen and thighs were removed, and the abdominal cavity emptied of its viscera. Literally everything pulled out. That is fucking rotten.
And that's what they don't explain very well in any of the media. They say that the uterus was removed, but a lot of the other murders as well, it was removed as in it was scooped out, not internally removed. It was scooped out of the pelvis.
It had to be
the pelvis.
There were things in the way.
And there's no way that somebody could do that
without
or scientifically or doctorally. There's no way that anyone can do that.
Without
that's
medical
what has been
history.
Proven. Yeah. No, like the way that you would have to remove a uterus would be internally.
Yes.
So the way that you would remove it through the front, which is how this one is described as, you would have to cut through the pelvic wall, which is not scientific. This is where my theory of the person who did it comes into play.
Yeah, okay.
Because he was a bit of a spaz.
Ben, was you going to touch on that just a moment before I carry on, or I thought I heard you say something? Sorry.
No, it's pretty brutal. It's just so brutal.
So, listeners, we are not done just yet. The breasts were cut off, the arms mutilated by several jagged wounds, and the face hacked beyond recognition of the features. Hacked as well, not like cut, hacked. Like,
what was done with the breast, though?
I think I'm getting to that in a moment. Hold on.
Okay.
The tissues of the neck were severed.
This is the right one.
Yeah.
I need to put my erection down. Calm down. Hang on.
I knew there had to be something vulgar. I knew it. The tissues of the neck were severed all round down to the bone. The viscera were found in various parts. The uterus and kidneys with one breast under the head, the other breast by the right foot, the liver between the feet, and the intestines by the right side, and the spleen by the left side of the body. That's not someone just doing this through pure sickness and just.
Have you ever had acupuncture?
No.
So this links in, and I don't know whether they did this in From Hell because of opium or the idea of opium or stuff like this, but the idea of acupuncture did come around from smoking opium.
Okay.
And that link with those body parts where they are. This is where I was going to talk about before, but I didn't. Right. I was like, I'll keep it in there. This is where it comes from. So the concept. So when in all media now they always talk about scientists talking. Jack the Ripper talking about him being a doctor or whatever. I don't think that's where that came from. I think it came from the holistic idea of acupuncture. In my opinion, I'm not a ripologist. But,
yeah. Okay, last paragraph. Sorry.
Concept. Sorry.
The last paragraph, we're still not done yet. The flaps removed from the abdomen and thighs were on a table. The bed clothing at the right corner was saturated with blood, and on the floor beneath was a pool of blood covering about 2 square feet. The face was gashed in all directions, the nose, cheeks, eyebrows and ears being partially removed. The lips were blanched and cut by several incisions running obliquely to the chin. There were also numerous cuts extending irregularly across all features. Now, if you just put that whole entire post-mortem together, you might as well have thought that she had been thrown in front of like a combine harvester.
Yeah.
Like, it's fucking horrific.
It's a frenzied, like, mad attack, though, isn't it? It's like just ripping
Right, but Ben, what's strange, it has to be frenzied for how ferocious it is, but as JJ keeps tapping into, it sounds ritualistic, like it's planned to some degree.
I see it as like almost like someone's, when they get that like electric thing on the elephant's foot in the kebab shop and they like carving away.
Oh, right.
That's just all I can think of. You just go,
the kebabby did it. It's a kebabby.
My mum chopped her finger off one Christmas with one of those.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
An
I
elephant's
think
foot with one of them like 1980s beige trimmers. With the two
it just
blades.
feels like he's just going, I'll take it. Like it's like, oh, I'll take a bit off here. I'll take a bit off there. Oh, I'll take a bit off there. Like, and he's just like until there's nothing left. Like,
well, like Hannibal Lecter does.
Yeah.
But you look at the picture, and it's like, how is that? It's frenzied. There's no question. It is absolutely frenzied. But it's definitely ritualistic and planned or precise in its.
It seems ritualistic in hindsight, but when you think about it, it's just someone just going, there's no one stopping me doing this. I can just keep doing it. I can keep doing it. I can keep doing it.
Right,
Just pulling.
And we're sitting here.
I've got to go. But we're seeing it from.
Oh, like, why did he put that there? Why is that there?
Why?
Like.
It was placed, but it was probably going, finish with that, next, finish with that, next.
Done with this, done with that.
Let's see what happens if I take a bit of a face off. Like, I don't think it's...
I have to disagree with both of you. Like, not both of you, but I feel...
One of you.
It's my, like, my brain just like, I really want it to be something weird, but it might be just the guy, like you said, just, like, ripping bits off. But I feel like it is your Hannibal Lecter kind. Like, it's logical. Like, one of the things that I haven't read about is their parts missing. Well, not one of the things I haven't read about.
Well, the kidneys were taken from the first one. I think uterus was taken.
With this one, is parts missing? Did someone put the puzzle piece back together? Like, did they slap the wafer thin hand back?
I think her heart was taken, wasn't it, or something like that?
Well, in From Hell, they insinuate that he puts a heart in the kettle and then throws it over to the fire. But I don't know whether that's just Hollywood. But reading from the notes of this, there's nothing further that insinuates anything being removed, because that was Dr. Thomas Bond's detail of the injuries in the subsequent inquest. Sorry, post-mortem report.
So we also don't agree with every scientific evidence inquest, especially after the Diana one.
Well,
where she was seen walking around. Next minute, she's dead.
Right, that's true. I'd like to think that, for instance, a doctor wouldn't necessarily, but like you can't sit there and say that there isn't anyone sitting there going, that isn't removed, is it? Like, don't include that or something. Right? Yeah, okay. I'm looking at it from my conspiracy eye, essentially, instead of just reality, like black and white reality. Sorry.
The picture does look like it does, and this is probably because how desensitized everyone is now. It does look like a doll. It looks like it. Like, for instance, the leg in the foreground doesn't look like it's got muscular structure at the bottom. And this is why I'm asking if things were removed and not left anywhere. Because the leg doesn't look like it's there. Like, it literally looks like there's all the muscles gone. The foreground leg.
I mean, you can see the bone. You can physically.
But that's it. Where's the rest of the leg? Like, you can't see the.
What they've taken off?
Yeah, this is what I'm saying. Like, has like 99% of the body been recovered?
Well, they did say
remember, she would have been on the breadlines. She would have been starving, so there wouldn't have been a lot of fat.
She's been on crocodile.
True, yeah.
Yeah, but you can see her. But you can see her fucking.
She's on Atkins.
Back leg.
But it does mention.
Unless she was like lame in one leg.
It does mention that the flaps removed from the abdomen and thighs
you can see the big chunk with the bone
by.
there. Look, look at the. I mean, I'm looking at the picture. I'm pointing at the pictures, but yeah,
for
you can see
listeners, you could. There's.
It's just a mental image.
Yeah,
but it isn't the thigh that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the calf.
Oh,
like
sorry.
You can see the calf in the background.
Oh yeah, but
like
that could just be
covered.
That could just be covered by that bit of.
It's not covered.
Duvet though.
You can see that it isn't covered.
It looks like that whole leg's been cut off and just laid in.
It almost does.
Plumped back.
Oh,
literally how I feel after every festival I've ever been to.
Yeah,
I've had my uterus ripped out.
Could you? I genuinely could not imagine witnessing something like that.
On the Wikipedia, there's another crime scene photograph from the other angle.
There is?
Yeah.
Oh, is that the one where it's as if the body has been laid down on the floor?
Yeah. Oh.
Is there debate over that?
You can see the fat and like the things that have been removed. It's from the other angle, so it's over the top of the body, looking back towards the other photographer, and you can see.
Hold on then. Mary Kelly Wiki. This is again.
There's something really peculiar about the way she's lying. Like, that to me is like the way that she's lying isn't like you said before about how.
Remember, he's been moving her about and like pulling bits off there. So
I get that, but there's a very kind of like complacent vibe, isn't there, about that?
Yeah, that's what I mean. That's why I don't think it's ritualistic. I think it's like just you want it to be ritualistic.
Have you've seen the hanging man in the tarot cards? Like that is very much that pose that she's in. 100%.
This crime scene photo, the different angles, Ben, that I'm looking at. So I'm trying to. Is that her hand on her chest that I'm looking at?
And that's her abdomen and fires.
You
First
can see
I pulled out. Sorry.
What one is it?
I can't see it. It's not in focus.
Yeah.
What was it?
It's a page of swords, which is a reflection of the hanging man.
Oh God! Like just looking
at literally the first card I've pulled out of the pack. But it would have been that way. But you can't see it because it's not.
But looking at that picture is the fact that you can actually see the fibers, like, and the lines of muscle, and it is. I don't think any normal person could do that. But as you guys were saying, for stuff to be removed, or someone has said that it was precise and the things to be removed were so well done and approach that the person had to know had to have some form of medical background. But then if you have a medical background, you're going to be used to seeing stuff like that, aren't you?
Yeah.
And that kind of ties into the movie From Hell. And I know I don't want to specifically be like, oh, that's the true story. It kind of does tie into a lot of things about that. It's, but yeah, everybody listening as well as viewers, that is, we could go through every single victim that has been
potential victim,
but you wouldn't be able to record long enough. Your SSD drive would end up becoming full. So we only included the canonical 5, but 2 prior that began the murders, and one that is hotly debated as being one.
There's a few other
victim.
Like possible early victims that we won't get. Like, was it Annie Millwood, Ada Wilson, Emma Smith?
Ada Wilson, yes, that was another name I remember coming across.
And then after Mary Kelly, there was Rose Myler, Alice Mackenzie, and then the Pinchin Street torso could be one, and then Francis Coles. There's a few.
There was also around that era. There was a mythical character called Spring-Heeled Jack.
Spring-Heeled Jack.
You heard of him? He's almost, to me, it sounds like he's a Southend werewolf person of like Whitechapel at that time. They think it was a guy that had like springs for heels and he could jump over houses.
Yeah, he was like a devil, wasn't he? Yeah.
Funny, yeah. They reckon he was like a devil of some sort. But yeah, that wraps it up. I think it's 3 hours and 19 minutes now. We're going to have to do the suspects in another episode. And I think what will be... That will... deal with it. That'll be interesting because I think we will... the suspects...
We're going to double down on the people who think it is now. And it's just going to be like...
Yeah, I think, granted, this story is immensely... interesting, but my prime suspect, like in everything that went on with my prime suspect, and obviously you guys will find out who it is in the next episode. To me, his everything in that is just as interesting as this whole entire story. Like that, how they connect a lot of these together is as interesting, in my opinion. It's not as boring as what you'd think it sounds like.
Yeah, I think a lot of it relies on these actually being connected killings.
Yes.
Which the more you look into it, the deeper you read into it, the more you think, actually, 2 of those 5 probably didn't have anything to do with it.
Yeah, probably not.
So it's 3 killings.
Yeah.
But those only 3 in Whitechapel. So, there's obviously... the guy
London's
could be
huge.
Yeah. Yeah. So thank you for listening to this episode. Sorry we left you on a bit of a... with blue balls. But it should mean
what an episode to bring it back with, to be perfectly honest.
Yeah. And I mean, it's Halloween yesterday. It was meant to be.
It has to be, yeah.
Yeah,
Well, it was Halloween yesterday, yeah.
And we're going to try and do the next episode on November 9th, which was the date of Mary Kelly's death, right?
Yeah, that would be good if we could do that. That would be the plan. I would
JJ's going to check his diary. He's not doing anything because he's being locked down. You're being locked down, so you won't be doing anything.
Yeah, I've got nothing to do, but it just depends what day it is, isn't it?
It's a
I'm not going to be able to buy any more booze. This is why I was like, let's do the suspects now, because I'm drunk.
It's Monday. It's not next Monday, not tomorrow, the week after. So it's a week away.
Cool.
From today.
Well, I think we could brush over certain suspects and like.
As long as it's not PlayStation release week.
It's not. It's the day before Xbox comes, so I'll be happy to do it that. But yeah, so thank you guys for listening. As always, please join the Discord and get involved now, because now's the time when you can put your evidence forward for who you think the suspect is.
That would be a good ididea. Love it.
That's a great. So we'll look at that and we'll kind of see if there's any that we can bring forward.
What's JJ?
I don't know what JJ's doing. If you're watching on YouTube, try and put in the comments what you think JJ's doing. And also comment below if you have any suspects. So any of the suspects and if you think maybe we've got the same suspect, who knows? Because we've definitely given some clues as to who we think the suspect is.
Absolutely, yeah.
In this episode. But make sure you sign up for the Patreon, join the Discord, follow us on Instagram. Not that anyone does
Twitter.
the Instagram anymore. We've stopped posting on that, I think.
Oh, we'll post on it, don't worry.
Someone do the Twitter, someone do the Instagram.
I'll do the Instagram, I'll take that.
I've got Twitter.
You do the Twitter. Epstein didn't kill himself.
He didn't.
Bye.
I was gonna say free Ghislaine Maxwell. Believe all women.
Hashtag
believe all.
Tim Dillon.
Lana.
Sex work is
Hashtag
work.
believe all women.
Hashtag.
But yeah, thanks for listening, everybody. Much love and appreciation.
Epstein didn't kill himself.
What happens when it comes to it? In the thing.
Oh, maybe they did. So in the back, there is a
Light brown jacket.
cool story.